So, man, crazy day. We were talking about this guy, Daniel Perry, the other day, and he got convicted. If you don't know who he is, he's the guy who was driving Uber in Austin wearing shorts, flip-flops, and a t-shirt when far-left extremists surrounded his car, one with an AK-47, pointed at him, and then he fired in self-defense. They opened fire on him. He fled, called the police, and they claimed he wanted to murder these people. And so he was convicted. Right now, many prominent personalities are calling on Greg Abbott of Texas to pardon this man. He was convicted in Texas, in Austin. And I got to tell you guys, I keep having people, they had said to me over and over again before we relocated from New Jersey, they're like, you got to go to Texas, man. You got to go to Texas. Everyone's going to Austin. And I was like, Austin is like the California of Texas. Why would I go there? Why would I want to be in Texas in general? And well, there's a fair point. It was a purple state. Now it's turning red because people moved there. So I accept that. But at the same time, look what they're doing to people. We're going to go over this story. This one's kind of crazy. And then to get into the details about what's going on, at the same time, this guy's going to jail. You have Riley Gaines, the swimmer, who's speaking out about men competing in women's sports being physically attacked, forced into hiding at the University of Kentucky. And these conversations need to happen. Because what is the left doing? They're holding up seven fingers as they storm the capital of Tennessee, claiming that the mass murderer in Nashville is a victim. That's their narrative, and they'll keep playing it. Yet the man who was defending himself while just wearing t-shirt and shorts in his car had a gun pointed at him. He is the bad guy. So we're going to talk about all of that. Before we get started, my friends, head over to timcast.com. Become a member by clicking Join Us right there on the left. And you'll get access to members-only uncensored shows Monday through Thursday, but also our Discord community. When you sign up, you can get access to various chat rooms where you can hang out with other like-minded individuals, and the community building thing is a big component of what we're trying to get done. If you're a member for at least 6 months, or you sign up at the $25 level, you'll get access to the VIP chat room, which allows you to submit questions to call into our after shows Monday through Thursday. So definitely check that out. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. We got a couple people joining us tonight. We've got from OAN, right?
Yes,
or OAN?
yes.
We got Karen McKinney.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. Who are you? What do you do?
So my name is Karen McKinney. I host Tipping Point on One America News. I've been doing that for about 3 years. Started with the company about 6 years ago, writing and producing in the newsroom. So it's been a fun journey up and up to wherever we go next. So
right on. So you've been tracking a lot of news. You know a bit about what's going on?
The stuff we're talking about today, ever since I was little, I kind of started debating teachers. That was my biggest thing. So I kind of like that. I find it fun. I kind of thrive in that.
Right on. Cool. Well, we got a lot to talk about. And then we also got in the reserve chair, we got Clint. He's back.
Clint Russell, Liberty Lockdown, as well as Tower Gang co-host, maybe one day soon, a Timcast employee. We'll find out.
Poker with the boys.
Poker with the boys, baby. Let's go. Tim and I played today, and we wiped the floor with everybody, so I feel like we're on a good...
That's right. We were doing a little test run and wiped the floor with everybody as per usual, And so, that's the plan. We're getting everything built for Poker with the Boys. So Clint's here. We're having him on the show while he's here. And then we got Hannah Claire hanging out.
Hi, I'm Hannah Claire. I'm a current Timcast employee. I'm a writer for Timcast.com.
I'm Ian Cross, and some days are dark, and sometimes we talk about the dark spinning depth of the black hole that we're surrounding. But listen, sometimes you get a white pill, and that was today when Vivek Ramaswamy.
We talked about
on the Culture War podcast with Tim. If you haven't seen it yet, it's on the Tim Pool channel. Man, they went for 2 hours. Vivek is running for president in the Republican Party, and the guy has solutions. Really impressive.
Yeah, I'll stress that too. YouTube.com/Timcast or on Apple and Spotify, the Culture War podcast. Vivek really is one of the... I was honest. I said, I think I'll vote for you in the primary. Donald Trump will win, and I'll vote for Trump in the general. And he's like, okay, we'll see. But in terms of knowing what's going on, having solutions, and actually, I mean, he was talking about defunding the FBI, about firing most of the Federal Reserve, really gutting these things, foreign policy stuff. He went all at it. So, but brilliant dude.
Exceptionally. And you really got to see him to know. Like, it's worth watching just to understand. Words won't do him justice. You got to see the...
To understand he made this point as we were talking about algorithmic manipulation. He said something like, people, what did he say? He said, people thought the AI monster was going to be a robot with laser eyes, but it's not. It's Dylan Mulvaney. It's people who are manipulated by the algorithms into becoming things that are out of sync or disruptive to society.
Well, let us keep each other in check and not become the disruptive force that we so fear. We also have Kellen over here. What's happening,
Hey,
bro?
Fridays are the best days. What's up, guys? It's Kellen. Let's get this thing started.
All right, here's the first story from the Daily Mail. Army sergeant is convicted of murdering Black Lives Matter protester by shooting him dead during July 2020 riots in wake of George Floyd murder. Daniel Perry, 37, a 37-year-old Uber driver and Army sergeant, was driving through downtown Austin on the night of July 25th, 2020. He ended up in the middle of a BLM march and in an altercation with protester Garrett Foster. Full stop. That's not what happened. Daily Mail's wrong. Foster just walked up to his car with a rifle, pointed it at him, and then this guy fired back. That's it. He didn't yell at him or anything. Nobody was yelling. Perry shot Foster dead, claimed it was self-defense, but on Friday, a jury found him guilty of murdering Foster. There's a few key details which need to be mentioned. First, I will say, there is a widespread push from tons of conservative personalities calling on Greg Abbott to pardon this man, and I agree. Not like this guy. Look, this guy certainly said some things that I find questionable in the past, but that has no bearing on the fact that he's an Uber driver. He's wearing shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops, and a guy wearing a vest with a rifle and a mask marching with BLM points a gun at him, and then he fires in self-defense. If they were going to say, reckless endangerment or something, I'd roll my eyes and be like, well, they're getting him, whatever. But murder and life in prison, that's what they're going for. They say he was driving through, found himself in the midst of a protest, blah, 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 blah. Let me scroll down. Defense lawyers said that Foster raised his AK-47 at Perry and that Perry fired in self-defense. Witnesses have said during the trial that Foster never raised his rifle at Perry. Well, of course, the witnesses are BLM protesters. Of course, they are likely to lie. A jury found him guilty. In their closing arguments, they insisted he had no choice but to shoot Foster 5 times as he approached Perry's car with an AK-47. Prosecutors said Perry had plenty of choices, including driving away. Full stop. How many stories have we heard where people who drove away were accused of hit and run or something because people are banging on their car? Right. So did he? And they opened fire on him. I don't care. If you were rioting and you're carrying weapons and you approach someone and they panic because you're pointing a weapon at them, sorry. And of course, I just don't believe the BLM people. However, they say Perry also said that in Texas, you could get away with shooting them. They mentioned his social media posts. That's probably what got him. You should not say that stuff. Perry's phone showed he was texting a woman shortly before the encounter with Foster. The woman he wanted to meet up with sent him a text asking for money. This is an age-old story about a man who couldn't keep his anger under control. It's not about police. It's not about protest marchers. It is. There's video. I'm not going to play the video. But look, people have a right to keep and bear arms. People have a right to march down the street with those weapons. You don't have a right to be part of a group that has committed several acts of terrorism over the previous days, and then surround someone's vehicle while pointing a rifle at them. That's just that you've crossed the line. And so my response to all this is, it's a horrible story. I wish it didn't happen. It sucks. But how is putting this guy in prison going to solve anything?
It's a sensitive story, and I don't have a lot of data on this. Really what it comes down to was this guy pointing the gun at him or not. And we only have witness testimony. Because if he has the gun and it's like at an angle pointing right past the guy and he's moving towards the guy, it could give the illusion that he's pointing towards him. But and I don't know how far away were the witnesses.
All the testimony I've seen is that he approached the car.
How do you get him on murder?
Because of the idea that he premeditated it or had intent with that post on social media.
And so let me read this. Protesters didn't know anything about Perry when they attacked the car and boxed it in, said Doug O'Connell, who was defending Perry. O'Connell argued that Foster was dressed for battle at the protest, including wearing a neoprene vest, carrying an AK-47, a club, and a knife. Perry was wearing a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. Garrett Foster is dressed for war. Daniel Perry is dressed for the beach. Murder means intent. If they want to say reckless endangerment or negligent homicide, I'd be sitting there and we'd be arguing the legal merits. No, they convicted him for intentionally going to this guy and killing him.
I think because as you're bringing up with the social media posts and they were trying to say, see, he wanted this chance to do what he did. I think what it actually shows is his mindset is like, oh my gosh, look how scary these rioters are, these looters are, the different social media posts that he had. So when he turns the corner, and I think during the trial it came out that there was evidence that his car was slowing, because all the witnesses, as to your point earlier about the witnesses saying, well, he didn't point the gun. Well, the witnesses also said that he sped up into them. And I think they said, oh, we just heard tires screeching and this and that. But then I think the evidence of the trial showed that his car was decelerating, correct?
Decelerated to let
exactly.
a quadriplegic woman use the crosswalk.
They are lying.
So he turns into it and he's like, oh my gosh. And his mindset is, I've been following this for months now. How scary. I don't want to be the next guy to die. Oh my gosh, a gun's in my face now. I think that more accurately describes why he has those past social media posts rather than what the prosecutors are trying to say is that, oh, he's a bad man looking for a fight.
And other witnesses have testified that they had called the cops saying this group is carrying guns. We've asked them to leave. We can't do anything. I mean, all the outlets are describing it as like, they were marching. Everything's fine. But like, put yourself back into this summer of 2020. It was an extremely turbulent and violent times in major cities across America. And people who were sort of caught in the crosshairs, residents who lived in the area, just had to wait and hope that nothing that fatal would happen. And unfortunately, in this case, it did.
And I wonder if his defense was smart enough to bring up this story from Deseret. Police arrest 2 after man shot during Provo protest. That's right. BLM ran up to a truck for no reason, literally none. This wasn't a truck driver chasing anybody down. It was a guy driving down the street. BLM extremists ran up and shot the guy in his car. June 30th, 2020. And they say 2 people were arrested Tuesday night in connection with the shooting of a motorist. About 1 month later, this Army sergeant was driving down the street in Austin when he was approached by a guy with a gun and shot back. And that context, I think, is extremely important for the jury to understand. This faction of individuals, their ideology, they have been committing acts of terror, they have been killing people, and only a couple of weeks ago walked up to a motorist and shot him. And here I am in my car, is what I'd say, and they were walking up to me and I said, here we go again. That's the gun. He points it at me. But you know what? It doesn't matter because they're in Austin. And I think I find it laughable that people are like, you got to move to Austin, man. And I was like, no, you don't. You do not want to live in these places. You will go to prison when they try to kill you and you try to defend yourself.
Yeah, and it seems so obvious that it was self-defense in this particular instance. But what I would like to know is there's been other pretty egregious police killings of litany of minorities as well as white people since the Biden administration came to power. You have not heard from Black Lives Matter in terms of protests and riots and things like that. And what that tells me is that it was catalyzed somehow. And we still don't have answers as to how that came to pass. And I would like to know.
You mean the riots of 2020 was catalyzed?
Yeah, the whole summer, man. It was crazy. It was like it was basically 100 days of just misery and insanity. And I just don't buy the organic nature of that. And for the life of me, I wish OAN or some organization that's actually interested in getting to the truth would dig into that, because it seems like there's a story there, and I don't know what it is.
What were you going to say?
Go ahead.
Oh, you're going to be much more interesting than me, man.
I was just going to say, on one point, yes, it kind of reads like, color revolutions and stuff, where these big moneyed interests that they go out there and they're able to kind of fund and they can kind of put money into it. They can kind of get people amped up and out there on the streets. I think Foster was on the streets, every day pretty much for a month or two. Yeah, exactly. So he kind of was like a full-time protester / rioter at that point. One thing that I do think is interesting to perhaps bring up here is that I think reporting says he was a Boogaloo boy, right? The Foster guy. So I know they have big gun control culture, right? However, he was rolling with BLM. And of course, we saw a lot of that kind of, mix in the summer of 2020 with the riots. But it's interesting to me because with BLM and other left-wing groups, one of their hallmarks is pushing for gun control. And it's interesting that it's only specific groups. It's only like law-abiding regular Americans that they want gun control for. You see the Chaz, for example, Antifa and other related group, Johns Brown's clubs, the rest. It's interesting that when they set up their little Chaz, what did they first do? They erected a border. They patrolled that border with armed guards and they deported anyone they didn't like from the area. And you see that over and over and over with these groups. So when they say gun control, they don't really mean gun control. They just want to be the ones with the guns and the people they don't like not having the guns. In this case, Foster and friends having guns and the Perry and his friends not having guns.
Boom. And then we saw in Wisconsin when BLM protesters cheered and clapped as a man was arrested in his own home. I thought they were supposed to be against the cops. Right. No. When the police come and arrest you, they are clapping for it. Mm-hmm. That's where we're going. That's where we are.
Yeah. disturbing.
So what are the odds you think that Abbott steps up and does something about this?
I think it's actually pretty high. Because look, this is violent extremists. They've killed other people before. There's 20 plus deaths. There's 19 plus deaths directly tied to the protest, and an estimated 32 in the periphery of the riots. I shouldn't say protest, riots. This guy, in his shorts and t-shirt, convicted of murder? Something's wrong here. Abbott needs to just pardon.
Yeah. Well, let me say one quick thing in defense of the Boogaloo Boys, which will be very unpopular, but many of them are libertarians and many of them are hard 2A guys, and many of them were out there just to defend the protesters from the police. However, if you're going to approach someone and you're protesting in the middle of the street and you have a vehicle that is now stopped and surrounded and you approach them with an AK-47 or whatever sort of assault rifle, well, I don't even want to say assault rifle, the scary looking guns, not a good idea.
It's not just that. The Boogaloo Boys have been praised for they're not directly Antifa or BLM.
No, they're not.
But if you are marching with Antifa and BLM, there's no distinction.
Yeah.
Sorry, these people have firebombed buildings. They have killed people. Michael Reinhold in Portland with a BLM communist tattoo on his neck shot Aaron Danielson twice in the chest. And then you're like, you know what? I'm going to march with these people.
Yeah.
It's like, well, with a rifle, and you point it at someone, and people are pointing on the chat. There's a video of him holding the weapon at high ready. He's got the gun
That's what I'm talking
ready to
about.
go.
If a guy approaches you at high ready with a rifle at high ready, man, in the middle of a riot and you're stuck and you can't move, you've got to assume the worst. What choice? I'm not trying to incite stuff, but like, what are you supposed to do in that situation? You have to protect yourself. Yeah, you can either just put your hands down and stick your chest out right at the tip of his gun, maybe. But like, what's the other choice here?
No, consider
hit the gas.
Consider the options. Exactly. You have to hit the gas, drive through, in which case you're going to get an attempted homicide charge.
Yep.
Or you fire, in which case you're charged with murder and apparently convicted. Or you just cross your fingers and hope that the dude's not going to fire back.
But this is beyond just happening to somebody in a vehicle with BLM. We saw the parking garage attendant in New York,
right,
who a guy literally shot him twice. Fighting for his life, this man wrestles the gun away and then shoots the would-be murderer. And then he wakes up being criminally charged with attempted murder in a hospital after nearly dying. And he's crying. He was crying in bed saying, I don't understand. This is a nightmare. What's happening? Why are they doing this to me? Because they're evil people. They are evil. There's no question. I'm sorry, Ian. It is a fact. If a man is on his deathbed after being shot twice and he's crying saying, why God? It's because Bragg is an evil person. And the only reason he backed off that prosecution is because people who are good stood up and said, don't you try it. And then he backed up and said, no, okay, we're going to stop.
Do you think utilitarianism is evil in general?
Well, it's to a certain degree, but let me make this point. What's happening to this guy, Daniel Perry, I was surprised to find out the trial was going on. How did we not know about this? How is this story, which is similar to Kyle Rittenhouse, different in many ways, completely just under our...
Because there's no video. No video.
There is video of it.
What, is it good video? Is it enough to know what's going on?
No, I mean, from what I've read, everyone is saying it's not super clear. Even the police body cam footage responding to the incident is like a little ambiguous. I mean, the defense called their own ballistics expert to try and analyze the video. And I think that's one of the reasons that Kyle Rittenhouse was able to not get lost in sort of the immediate media backlash that would have inevitably followed him, because so many people could point to this video and say, look at it. Like, you can't spin this. It's pretty obvious what happened here.
Yeah.
Look at this story from Deseret. How are we supposed to live in a country where you hear the news about BLM for no reason shooting a motorist who I believe was a woman? You can see it, and people are mentioning it in the chat. And then what do? You know what? Look, man, you want to live in Austin? Fine. At a certain point, I'm getting to the point where I'm going to be like, oh, did another person get convicted of murder for trying to save their own life? No sympathy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, dudes. Look, I'm not going to say it's not. I'm not going to say it's easy for a lot of people to get out of cities. Very, very hard. Very, very difficult. But I'm just at the point where I'm like, I mean, it's 3 years on. 3 years since the summer of love. And I've been saying even 2 years before that, you need to get out of these cities. They will do this to you. They will arrest you for what BLM does.
Yeah. If there's a Democrat DA, you're in trouble.
And there are people who are still like, I'll be fine. I'll keep my head down. It's like, okay, well, when that happens and they do come and arrest you, don't expect me to offer any assistance.
Do you think one of the biggest things is because those who are on, I guess, right, libertarian, various assorted groups, is that we kind of don't like, state power so much. So it's more like elections come by, we're not as into it as, say, someone who is one of the left ideological, groups. So when local elections come around, we're not as mobilized and we're not as interested. Like you said with this this trial, a lot of people weren't as paying attention to it as much. So I think that happens a lot because even if you get out of cities, you could be in a smaller town where, everyone seems to be kind of maybe more conservative and you think, wow, I feel really safe here. Everyone supports law enforcement. And then before you know it, you didn't pay attention to your local elections, and now you're like, how come this DA is letting everyone out? How come and on and on.
But the issue is it's not bad enough. And so there is one simple reality. If you are holding on to a skillet and it burns your hand, you will let go. The issue is the damage and destruction that is occurring in cities is not escalating to a point just yet where people are going to drop the pan, i.e. get out. Now let me give you an analogy, right? You grab you put on your oven mitts and you grab a tray of fudge brownies from the oven and you're holding on to it and you're trying to figure out where to put the brownies down and you can feel the heat is making its way through those mitts. What happens if you don't put it down right now? Eventually the mitts can't stop the heat. It burns your hand. You drop the pan. Maybe it's Pyrex, it shatters on the ground, and now there's a disaster zone. Right. When instead you could have been like, okay, I got to just set this down anywhere I can set it down. It's getting too hot. What's happening right now is we're at that point. People are still in these cities, and we can feel the heat, but they're going, look, the heat that I'm feeling, the pressure that I'm feeling in the city does not reach a level where I'm willing to experience hardship to get out. Yeah. And I mean it, hardship. I'm not saying it's easy. It might be the most difficult thing you've ever done. But trust me, the people who have said to me, like, you look, man, I got a house. I can't sell it. I don't know how to move. Trust me, when bullets fly through your daughter's window, you will pack up and leave and go sleep under a bridge or something like that. You will be like, okay, that is too hot. And so my point is simply this. I'm not passing judgment. I'm simply saying I understand why people are not going to leave their homes until the bullets come through their windows. But you know what? It's already happened to a lot of people.
Yep.
And so like that guy in Wisconsin, sooner or later, the cop will come to your house. They will search your home. They will charge you with whatever they want because you pissed off some BLM activist group because they know who you are. You watch this show. And then you're going to be like, it's too late now.
Yeah.
Now the DA is going to be like, Mr. Smith, don't leave the state. And you're going to be like, now what do I do?
I got to say real quick, I'm reading Scott Horton's pre-release of his new book. It's like 500 pages on the history between Russia and Ukraine. It's incredible. But the reason this correlates, and there is a correlation, he breaks down all of the color revolutions that happened through the Eastern Bloc nations that were CIA backed. And I can't tell you how reminiscent it was of living through 2020. And it strikes me as a color revolution. I'm not saying it was one, but it felt a hell of a lot like one. When you read about them, it's crazy. It's uncanny, honestly.
What defines color revolution?
Usually they're labeled by a color. So it'll be like the orange or the rose or the red and things like that. So, but there's a litany of them that happen in Eastern Bloc nations, like the break-off nations from Russia after the fall of the USSR. And usually it deals with electoral processes that are manipulated in some fashion. I'm not saying that's what happened in America, but that is what the CIA was.
I want to read this comment from Vision Storm. He says, Tim, quote, I'm not passing judgment. I'm just saying I have no sympathies if you have no means to leave your state. No, you completely misunderstand, perhaps intentionally. What I said is, for those who poo-poo the idea and say, it's not that bad, that is to whom I'm saying I have no sympathy if you've made this choice. Right. I'm also saying I understand for some people it is too difficult to do. It's very difficult. And then I'm also pointing out that at a certain point, it doesn't matter how difficult it is or the consequences, you will drop the tray, the glass will shatter, and it will create a problem for you. This is what I'm saying. If you are holding something too hot, shattering glass on the ground is the last thing you want to happen. If you are living in a house and you are like, I have nowhere to put this thing down, the moment BLM shows up to your house and sets a fire, you will flee your home with your kids, having no idea where you're going. It's not a question of your means to do so. It is a fact. If your life, your loved ones' lives are threatened, you will go and sleep in a tent in the woods before you let a violent mob kill you. That's it. I don't think there's any human being who's going to be like, oh, Antifa's here. What are they yelling? They want to kill me? I better just sit here. Especially when you have kids, you're going to be like, we're abandoning this right
it's
now.
got to go.
So my view is it may be the most difficult thing you have ever done. If it were me, I don't want to give anybody financial advice. If it were me, I would sell my house for whatever I could get for it and move out to the middle of nowhere. That being said, I am fully aware of when we moved out of Jersey, it wasn't the most difficult thing for us. You know, I had a successful YouTube channel. I had money that I'd saved up. And so after saving for about a year or two, and I'm like, I think we better get out of here before it's too late. So then we bought property out here in West Virginia, got a little tiny house somewhere, and then said, that's it. And then we moved out here, set up the company in what is now the Cast Castle, which is the company's. I don't live here. And that's the point. I understand. For me, it was much easier. And I moved much sooner than most people. But I do think sooner or later, if you do nothing, there will come a time when BLM will come up to your house. They'll be armed for some reason or another. Maybe you'll be at work. And they're going to be, or maybe they just you got an American flag in the front of your house. They've already done this. BLM has already threatened people because they had American flags on their houses. Sooner or later in these cities, it will happen. You want to buy, my point to people is, if you could buy a lottery ticket and if you won the lottery on it, then they would put you in prison for life. Like that was the prize. The chances of it happening are very, very low. But would you buy the ticket? Anybody?
No.
So the chances of BLM actually showing up to your house in the immediate future right now and destroying it is a lottery ticket's chance, okay? Over time, it's slowly becoming more and more likely. We are seeing more and more of this. Several years on now, they're putting people in prison after BLM attacked them.
Look at the Cash App founder, too, in San Francisco.
Exactly.
Do you think there was something to that? Because that was 2 a.m. You think he was doing a drug deal or something?
No.
Right outside?
He was that guy must have been worth $1 billion.
Was he walking home drunk? What was it, 2 a.m.? Why was he outside at 2 a.m. in San Francisco?
On a weekend?
Yeah.
Everybody's out at 2 a.m. on a weekend.
Drinking? Maybe
He
drinking.
was in San Francisco was a major urban area.
Where he used to live. I mean, he could be coming home.
He was going to his
friend's
house. He was going to his apartment, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
He was at his apartment.
Yeah.
And
Possibly-
I don't want it wasn't a bad area.
Yeah,
either.
and his family, don't take that for real. I don't know what happened, but it was just
it's simple, bro.
2 a.m.
In New York, yes, 2 a.m. Bars close at 4.
Don't walk around in cities at 2 a.m., guys, unless you absolutely have to. Stick to the bright lit streets, walk fast, like you're the one that's dangerous, and get to your destination.
And think about
look
what you're
360
saying.
as much as you can.
Think about what you're saying.
That's how you got to live in a city, man. It's dog eat dog.
Or you get out because...
Or get out if you can.
It's insane.
It's beautiful out in the open.
Yeah.
It is insane that we've gotten to the point where it's like, if you go out at 2 a.m. in a city, you might die.
Yeah, that's not.
And then here's the best part. The person who did it is going to get let go.
Yeah, you can't trust that there'll be any justification. I think the big thing you have to be conscious of that the water is boiling, right? Like, true, you may not lose everything today, but do you want to be in the place most likely to be the next epicenter of one of these riots?
Of course.
Probably not. And it is difficult to leave, but make it a priority. Like this is something that you maybe need to make a goal.
Let's talk about this story from Timcast.com. Female swimmer Riley Gaines assaulted by trans activists while speaking on women's rights. This is proof that women need sex-protected spaces. The video is crazy. The video is absolutely nuts. Let me play this video for you. Is there any? I'll just full size it. Is there audio or what?
There was when I saw it.
Oh, you know what the issue is? There's oh wait, there it is. The issue is that I have it muted. Nope, still no audio. Wait, it's still muted. There we go. And now it's on the wrong channel. We're bad at this audio thing, you guys.
Trans rights are human rights! 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 Trans rights are human
It's an. I don't think having been on the ground and actually seen this stuff, I don't think people realize what it's like when a mob forms and comes after you.
It is freaking crazy.
But let me explain something. Here's how it's going to go down. For you in your city, you are going to be at a grocery store or something, or a restaurant. And someone's going to overhear you talking to your friend saying something like, yo, these BLM people are nuts. They're going crazy. And there's going to be some waitress or woke person who hears you. They're going to find out who you are. They're going to see your name, and they're going to find out where you work. Things like that happened 10 years ago. Things like that have happened 5 years ago. One day, They're going to start posting online. They're going to attack you, and your company is going to be like, I don't know what it is you did or who you talked to, but we cannot have this heat, so we're going to have to let you go. I don't know who you pissed off or why. And you're going to be like, I didn't do anything. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, well, look, man, we don't want to be involved in whatever it is you believe, and your ideologies don't fit this company. They're going to go to your house. They're going to protest your house because this is what happened in Wisconsin. Does anybody know why they went to that guy's house and protested? He was some random local guy. Made no sense. Here's what happens. The mob. There is no individual who decides we are going to storm into this person's house and kill them. What happens is the mob is just moving amorphously. One person steps out in front, everyone steps out in one direction. They go to the house and one person goes up and starts knocking on the door. As soon as that person goes on the porch, it's an invitation to the rest of the mob to go on the porch. The person knocking, then someone sneaks by and tries to jiggle the handle. Someone sees the handle jiggle, and then they pop the handle and push the door open. Another person sees the door go open, and then they stick their head in and look around. Another person sees that person start sticking their head in and say, I guess I'll go in too. All of a sudden now, these people are walking into your house, all being egged on by each other. The snowflake doesn't blame itself for the avalanche. This is how I've seen all riots form. There will be a large group of people. One Antifa guy, will take a water bottle and just throw it straight up in the air. The moment that bottle comes down, then a bunch of people see the splatter and then they start throwing things too. They're like, oh, people are throwing things. They throw things. So one step at a time, one person moves an inch, another person moves an inch further. And then before you know it, they've kicked your door in, they're rampaging through your house, they're smashing stuff. And then once they go into your room, one guy wearing a mask punches you in your bed, and then someone else sees it, and then all of a sudden they're jumping up and down in your room, stomping on things and smashing things.
There's kids.
There's
listening.
videos of this.
I know, but there's like 14-year-olds listening that are going to be having nightmares, man. We got to be careful. I know it is true that you got to be safe. You got to take care of yourself, but you can.
Yeah, get out of cities. Because what I just described, there's actually a video of right now where people are sitting at a restaurant and a mob of people are standing on top of the restaurant tables, kicking the patrons in the face and stomping on them. I'm not just describing something out of the blue.
Right.
I'm explaining videos that have happened. And the guy in his house, when the mob showed up, that mob had set fire to a different house in Wisconsin twice. And so this guy brandishes a shotgun through the window and then puts it down. The police come and arrest him.
Well, and I think he's just describing the nature of kind of a mob dynamic, not necessarily trying to scare 14-year-olds. But I think that this also goes on the inverse for the people that are out there in the streets that are protesting, because the gentleman in the Boogaloo Boys, I forget his name right now, but the guy that had the AK or whatever it was, if you're going to put yourself in that situation, you're also putting yourself in tremendous danger, because if you're a member of the mob and people are all moving towards you in a wave, well, then if someone's armed and they fear for their lives, you don't know what might happen. And maybe that guy had no ill intentions. Maybe, as he's approaching the car, maybe he's genuinely trying to subdue or calm the situation, but you just don't know. So I agree with Tim. I mean, if I think a really good litmus test is look at the outflow population of your state from 2020 to 2021. If you had harsh lockdowns, you probably already had a net outflow, and those people are going to be the people that vote in alignment with your belief systems. So it means that your state is now so hard blue, you're probably never going to have political power in that state again. And this is why I fled California.
Well, and then one thing that scares me with the Riley Gaines video and how she was going to schools and trying to speak, and then they're like, the mob was after her, is the fact that how many times did we grow up hearing, the idea that, well, those are, because college kids have been doing this for many decades, of course. However, it seems like it's the intensity and the frequency is only getting worse. However, the idea was that these kids will graduate, they'll get out into the real world, and then the real world will somehow make them normal functioning adults. But
Nope.
We haven't seen that, because now we've seen these kids will graduate, and they will bring that with them to their workplaces. Mm-hmm. I think the New York Times ran a piece the other year, I think it was last year, right, that millennials are now afraid, or older millennials are afraid of Gen Zers who are coming along, because you might be 38, 39, thinking that you're quite liberal and stuff yourself, you're more liberal than your parents, but now
and you don't even know what's coming.
Exactly. The 23-year-old woke kid comes in and he thinks that you are a microaggressor, that you are XYZ.
And this is what Vivek Ramaswamy said when I interviewed him today for the Culture War podcast, that a lot of people thought I forgot exactly how he explained it, but the AI monster was going to be a cyborg with laser eyes, but it's Dylan Mulvaney. It is these young people who have been manipulated by the AI, and it's not intentional, but it's turned them into something out of sync with human civilization, with American civilization. These people live in a world crafted by social media algorithms. They are driven to do things that they think will be perceived as popular. They are weak-willed individuals. And this is leading to people believing insane things, adopting insane behaviors, and engaging in extremely violent tactics.
And sometimes they end up writing code to make the AI.
Let me add.
That's right. It makes it worse.
One thing that is supplemental to the AI ideological takeover. In August of 2011, Barack Obama included in a executive order that you would have every single federal governmental department would implement a DEI department within their institution. So that was the beginning of the end in terms of having any, and keeping in mind, the federal government is the number one, the largest employer in this country. So they were really like the first shot across the bow in terms of including diversity, equity, inclusion, hiring and firing practices, which is really the woke takeover of the business world. Naturally, because so much of the government's contracts are with actual private industry, but they also will now include demands that they also have a DEI department. So in a matter of about 12 years, you went from this concept being almost unheard of to being everywhere.
Is it that the government is not, I assume they can't make private companies start up a department, but are they just saying we're not going to give you funding if you don't?
Not so, actually, because you can include as a requirement in your government contracts that you will only do business with, just like the I think it was the OSHA vaccine mandate. They were saying if you are doing business with a government contractor, well, they're going to have the mandate as well, because that's where the money's coming from. It's taxpayer money, so they can still put the same sort of requirements. It's not force, but it's saying we won't do business with you if you don't have this.
They can't literally storm your offices and demand this one be the DEI room, but they can say we won't give you money and therefore you can't operate, you can't pay your employees,
Right.
You'll close down. If we are the main source of income, we are your biggest client, then you're stuck.
Very coercive.
That's a really great point that you bring up, because on my show I had a firearms expert kind of guest, and so he would be able to explain this better than I can. I'll try and like reemphasize or kind of boil down what he was saying. He's from Ammo Land, John Crump, so shout out to John Crump. But he was saying with one of Biden's recent executive orders mid-March, how the idea was because the DOD, I think it is, because they work so much with firearms manufacturers, that to put the squeeze on regular, law-abiding citizens who want to buy guns, they'll tell, the gun manufacturer, well, if you want our contract and look how much money we can give you, well, then you can't sell XYZ
Bingo.
firearms or accessories to civilians.
Yep.
And that's how they get you. So I think it's kind of similar to what you were saying.
It's social emotional learning is taking over academia and the education system. Diversity, equity, inclusion is taking over corporate America, as well as obviously governmental departments. And then you have ESG, which is taking over the highest levels of finance. Those are the three evil acronyms that are taking over everything. You spoke to Vivek today. I'm sure he would agree.
Do you think that there's that the market will correct itself?
It's very tough because what you're competing with is a printing press backed mechanism.
Wow.
You have access to not just the law setting, but the setting of interest rates plus the setting of monetary supply. I mean, that's a huge.
It sounds like a centrally planned economy.
Let me explain
Sounds like
it for
CCP.
You.
Yeah.
No. Let me explain it for you guys. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. This is the new religion that will seek to subvert Christianity. It is the religion of the water bearer. I remember reading about this and watching documentaries back in the day about how first it was the age of the ram. If you guys have seen Zeitgeist, you'll know what I'm talking about. And that's why the Jews would blow the ram's horn. And then Christianity was the age of Pisces, which is why they use the symbol of the fish. I'm not saying any of that's true, but that's what was said. And then the question was, what would be the new religion to supplant and subvert Christianity, the religion of the age of Aquarius? Well, as we enter the age of Aquarius, we have a new religion. In this tweet, David Rosado explains, the Great Awokening is a global phenomenon. No evidence it started in the U.S. media. Analysis of 98 million news articles across 36 countries quantifies. Exception, state-controlled media from China, Russia, Iran using wokeness terminology to criticize and mock the West. And here we see, in this image, you can see the rise of terminologies related to transphobia, homophobia, transphobic, Islamophobia. Every one of these countries, even the Congo, experienced a major spike in social justice rhetoric. The one thing that correlates, social media.
Yeah.
Simply put, when the AI is created and shared It functions to serve human emotion, and anger gets the most shares. So treating people like victims to get them angry got content to be shared. The human experience, similar. All of these countries started to realize this is what makes us money. The human being who wrote the article about Trump being Hitler did not think they were doing anything wrong. But what happens is 100 writers each write 100 stories, put them on the internet, and then the algorithm says, yeah, the one where Trump is Hitler. That guy gets 1 million hits, makes a bunch of money, and then everyone says, that's what we should write. Here we are. Welcome to the new religion.
And it's true because it gets picked up. It's kind of like there's always a language of power throughout all of time. There's the language that everyone kind of speaks. Back in the day, is like the lingua franca. The heads of state of England wanting to speak to the heads of state of Spain. If they couldn't speak intellectually between English or Spanish, they would use French as the intermediary. Latin was that at one point. Nowadays, it's speaking the language of power, speaking the however you want to phrase it, wokeism, social justiceism, whatever you want to call it. And that is, for example, what was it, like Guatemala or something, a nation where to get like $20,000 in a state grant from the U.S. State Department, they had to accept, I think some of the money had to be used for like drag queen shows. And in a country that's more conservative like Guatemala, it's like, well, why would they need that? It's because if they can speak the language, then the state is going to, and this state, meaning the U.S. in this case, will reward them greatly. In a similar way that there used to be actual fashion crimes. Remember, we kind of joke about that, but that was like a thing. The nouveau riche of the 1800s versus the like the old moneyed families, and how could they tell each other apart? Oh, you don't know how to dress. You didn't wear the new fashion for the spring. It sounds kind of silly, right? But you see that in today, like the Zuckerberg types. They'll kind of dress down. They don't want to be as flashy with their clothes and stuff because, again, it's signaling I'm on a different level. I may be rich, you may be rich, but I'm a different level than you. So the money of philanthropy, where you can kind of remake the world in your own image, and you kind of use your charity as like an investment, basically. It's not like they're giving away their money now they're poor. It kind of comes back to help them. But again, it's speaking the language of power. And as you were saying, Tim, earlier, like this is kind of like this has proven to be successful. So this is the language of power. Other countries around the world, if they want that U.S. money, they want that U.S. backing, they don't want a color revolution in their country, they're going to speak that language. Even if their populace is like, we don't want this, but they're going to speak that language, and they're going to push it saying, you better speak it or Uncle Sam's coming.
Such a profound point. And if you have ever watched any of the pressers that come out of the World Economic Forum, and you see all of the richest people on the planet, and they get up there and they talk about how they're all concerned about the poor. And I'm like, you're not, though. You're not. But they use that language. That is such a great analysis. I'd never even considered it. That is really the language mechanism that traverses language barriers now. Because if you're talking about equity and inclusion, well, then you're just one of us.
Other big groups that have a lot of money, a lot of backing will go, oh, that guy, I need to get in contact with him. He's in the same wavelength.
Yep. And the World Bank and the IMF backs the WEF in this entire, it's insane.
New religion.
Yeah.
It's the new religion, man.
Yeah, with the age of Aquarius, when does it begin?
Well, it depends on who you ask.
I think.
March 20th, 2021. I thought it was 2250. 2160. Some people say it begins.
But it depends on some people have speculated that it's
they were in it right now,
or that we're in the cusp between.
I think you're right.
We're watching the emergence of
as basically the Catholic Church has done a lot of good in history, but it's also done some bad. And I think the pedophilia that came out of that in like the 90s and stuff annihilated people's love for Christianity.
Well, there's a new report. I think it was out of Maryland about a scandal going back to the 60s. So all that stuff is bad,
and it crushed the old religion. It soured it, and now people do need something to believe in.
But this is not what's causing what we're seeing here.
It's created the void.
Here's the scary thing. This is, you said the dawn of the age of Aquarius is 2160?
When I pulled it up, it says 2021. So already that we're in it. I had heard in 2012 that it was coming up in like 2150 or something.
It may be. And what is it like? Every 2,500 years is a new age?
Yeah, it's every 2,160 years on
2,160. Average. So think about this. At the beginning of the age, it wouldn't immediately be that everyone is indoctrinated into a new religion. It would be that several hundred years into that era, the new religion dominates. So this could be, as we watch Christianity start to diminish, and this new psychotic cult take power, 100, 200 years, this could be the dominating.
That is so
religious theory.
dark. That
And I
is so
think-
dark if that's what happens.
And I think perhaps why. So, because I'm a devout Catholic, I'll just have to stand up for my church and say that actually pedophilia, obviously, it happens anywhere and everywhere, unfortunately. And so, actually, it was a lot less that happened in the church than happens in, say, the teaching profession or others. The church is actually has, again, so it happened on a smaller scale than people say. It just,
Well,
The mistake.
pop culturally, people go, "Oh, the church," but on a greater thing. So talking about like the different ages or whatever, I think one thing is what's happened in this nation has happened in a way that has happened in. Okay, maybe let's rephrase this. So what's happening in our nation because of some of the market forces, because of liberalism and other things, have eroded the networks that bind people and make people know who they are. What do you hear today from all the disaffected mobs? The people who will come up and want to, scream and yell and, threaten you and stuff. These are people who don't know who they are. And you hear that a lot, but you go back 200 years, people knew who they were. Who are you? Son of John. I'm a farmer. I'm this, I'm that. They knew exactly who they were. I'm a Catholic. I'm a Presbyterian. I'm a this or that. Nowadays, people don't know who they are. Because people are atomized, people are lonely. And so liberalism, market forces has snipped family ties, community ties, religious ties, all the ties that bind. And so people are lonely, they're atomized in cities, they're a lot more easily emotional. They're easier to lead, to riot, to do other things because they're more emotional. They don't have a family that they need to keep their name good for, reputations for, because everyone's kind of on their own. So if you ruin your own name, well, it doesn't matter for your brother or someone else. You're kind of all your own individuals. That's something the USSR and other nations, totalitarian states, did purposefully. We kind of got here accidentally. That's what I was trying to say earlier when I forgot my words. They did that intentionally, where they had the state come in and they snipped those ties. They destroyed ethnic groups that were very strong on religion, very strong on family ties. They would deport them, move them, do whatever. And then again, go after church, make it subservient to the state or just shut it down in general. And then on because they're getting people out of the peasant areas, because that's where tradition usually survives longest. And they were pushing people into the cities. You saw China do this even through like the 80s and 90s when they were on the come up before they pushed Japan out to become the world's second largest economy. Again and again, you saw that. Again, those totalitarian regimes, they were doing that purposefully because they want you listening to the state first and foremost and not to your family, to your pastor, whoever.
Forgive me, but
we got here accidentally. But it's the same result.
I don't agree it was accidental.
Okay. Oh, well, yeah, okay.
Give me your,
I get that.
Give me
I
your
get that.
theory as to how it happened.
Well, I mean, it could be accidental in the sense that there was just a bunch of policies that were completely ill-conceived and moronic, maybe. Or it could be that, you had the war on drugs and you broke the black family and you create all sorts of discord that happens there. Then you have, obviously, the militarism that has persisted throughout my entire adult life and far longer than that. I think that ultimately those things alone will kind of unmoor a society. It starts to degrade the culture, the underlying culture, the ties that bind. Then you have obviously the not the advent, but the popularity that came in the atheist movement over the past 20 years, I think was really interesting. And keeping in mind, I'm not a religious person, but I think that it's quite evident in hindsight that there is a major price to be paid when you have people that give up on religion and they make the state their god. And that is what I see being very pervasive amongst the young people.
I think bring up social media and how that's also atomizing things is very true. Got up this morning pretty early and I logged on to Steam to play some video games. And when I did, my dad logged on to play some video games and I was like, my dad's here. And we didn't talk, didn't message, nothing. I just saw his name and I felt his presence. But it wasn't like I was calling him on the phone. There was no communication.
It's a superficial connection. I think that's one of the strange part of our modern world. Instead of, you're absolutely right, going to church, seeing your family, living near them, being connected in a really authentic way where you can communicate with them, intimately kind of how they're living their lives, what they're thinking about, what their concerns are. You get updates on social media. Oh, this person got engaged. Oh, this person's moving houses. And it, again, we're tuned to have this dissatisfaction culture where it's like, why am I not getting those things? Why am I not in those relationships? How can I solve things? Who's at fault for that? Why don't I have what I want in life? I think part of it is that we don't have a unifying national culture and we struggle as a nation because of the geographic size and the complexity of our makeup to have that. And I think it became easier to pull people apart than to bring them together.
I think that the unifying culture that we once had was one of bootstrapping it, entrepreneurialism, I will find a way through. And now, unfortunately, because of public education, in my humble opinion, You now have the youngest generation that believes that they are oppressed structurally, not just because of race and sexism and all this other stuff, but also because of capitalism. They all believe that capitalism's evil. Not all, but a huge percentage do. I think that once you have broken that cultural tie, one of like, I'm going to find a way to make it, that's what the land of the free, the opportunity, all this stuff, that's what we used to migrate here for. That's what my great grandfather came here for. And now you don't hear that talked about very much from the people that are born here.
This is why I think Elon Musk buying Twitter was so important, because I believe that what we're seeing is just I would say it's probably more accidental. That when Twitter was created, it was the free speech wing of the free speech party. But when they implement these algorithms to maximize profits, they turned a generation of people around the world into psychotic, deranged individuals.
So short-sighted though, because I mean, culturally and not just culturally, but economically, civilizationally, like you're really playing with fire by feeding into these algorithmic.
But no one feels an obligation to that. No one feels like if you're at the tech entrepreneur and you could make $1 billion in a decade, that's what your priority is. That seems like forever. You don't.
And
think
where's
about
Jack Dorsey?
I have no idea.
Always.
Grown
He's
his
gone.
beard.
Yeah.
We didn't do it at
And
mine.
what happened to his friend? See, this is what really bothers me, is that story in SF is sad, because here's a guy who was leaving San Francisco saying, the crime is getting out of control, we gotta go. It's his buddies that did this. It was Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, Susan Wojcicki, I pronounce her name. These people were just like, we must maximize profits. So I gotta be honest, the criticism of capitalism, I can get to a certain degree. These big corporations were basically saying, create a social media algorithm, write me code, and I wanted to do one thing. I want it to reduce things that cost us money and increase things that make us money. And because big brand advertisers are terrified of leftist activists, you were more likely to see, if Coca-Cola was emailed by the far left, you're offensive, then they'd be like, okay, stop that campaign. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook says, we're losing money. What's going on? Well, the activists are mad, but conservatives wouldn't boycott. Conservatives don't protest. So these companies have nothing to worry about. Even right now with the Anheuser-Busch boycott, you still have a lot of conservatives being like, oh, it's stupid. I don't care. Okay. So Anheuser-Busch is looking at it. What happened? Nike doubled down in defense of Dylan Mulvaney because they do not feel the economic repercussions from conservatives.
I gotta make the defense of capitalism argument as an ANCAP. ESG. I'm wearing the shirt. Environmental social governance. This is exactly how the government is dictating diversity, equity, inclusion practices in these businesses, in their marketing schemes. Like, this is not an organic thing entirely. Tim is absolutely right. The algorithms, the social media world, the youth movement, all that's true. But it wouldn't be this bad. You wouldn't have so many companies that were insulting their customer base if it wasn't a financial imperative on the back end, because BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard are functioning under ESG protocols, which dictate that they will only invest in these companies.
Backwards.
No, that's true.
I know, but you got it backwards. ESG emerged from this, not the other way around. Social media companies, like I said, Jack Dorsey said, we're the free speech wing of the free speech party. So where did ESG come from?
ESG 2005 United Nations, Kofi Annan.
So when these algorithms get implemented, this is the point I made to, I can't remember who we were talking about when it came to academic. I think I was telling Phil Labonte this as well. ESG and other ideologies. How many, let me ask you basically, how many ideologies exist? Right, exactly. It's ridiculous. There's so many. Why is it that only these are prominent today? A vehicle was built by which they could be pushed onto the masses globally. And it just so happened that what fit those holes was the likes of ESG.
Correct.
There's a bunch of other ideologies that could have been, hey, how about white nationalism? Oh, nope. Jack Dorsey banned that stuff in like 2015 and 16. They were like, we're getting a lot of flack from activists. We are getting attacked by the corporate press. Shut this part down.
Yeah.
And then you could not monetize that content. It could not exist and it would not be influential. So nobody went near it. What happens is people like Jack Dorsey at one point says, I'm all about free speech. Then he has a board and investors say, we're not making money here. And he goes, it was not an instant thing. What happened that slowly changed at Twitter was they would get a bunch of far left activists who would attack them. And they would say, hey, look, we're getting attacked a lot for this stuff. People are quitting. The far left is much more likely to boycott, protest, or quit than the right is. So the economic pressure is just right there. There have been a bunch of economic ideologies. Climate change, for instance, has not had as easy of a time as ESG. Right. It's funny, right? Climate change has been around for a long time with Al Gore, and it's struggled to get a foothold. Why? Because social media doesn't care. There's no monetary incentive to ban someone who doesn't care about climate change.
Yeah.
But the ESG stuff overlaps with bigotry, homophobia, etc. So when someone says something naughty or racist, everybody says, okay, whoa, hold on there, guys. Everybody basically agreed we don't want to see that stuff.
Right.
It gets taken to an extreme degree. The far left throws a firebomb and complains, and all the corporations say, I don't want to piss these lunatics off. Please don't associate me with that kind of content. Twitter then says, don't worry, we'll downrank. This is literally what happened. YouTube said, we will downrank all of that content so people don't see it and flag it for demonetization. Please don't leave. There was no inverse pressure from the right to support and push for things they did like and to oppose the far left. So what happens? Man, I remember back when they were doing these weird videos showing kids sex toys. And this is like 2013, 2014. It's like during Gamergate. That stuff was all happening. Conservatives did not have that as a core platform. Conservatives have been behind behind on this the entire time. Simple example: Act Blue and Win Red. The Democrats have had an online digital fundraising platform, Act Blue, and it took the Republicans like 3 or 4 years to figure it out and make their own. That's how far behind they were.
Well, there's two reasons in my estimation. One, the conservatives allow the progressives to raise their children. So how are you going to compete with activism when you don't have kids that actually share your values? I think you're automatically at a dead end in that regard. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was just thinking through a few things as you were talking about it. It is interesting that a lot of people start out saying I'm free speech or I'm this or that, and then they find themselves on the opposite end of it. I wonder if there's something psychologically, because I've noticed with some people, I think maybe this is just something all humans deal with, your own internal biases, is that you feel like at heart you're a good person, right? Everyone kind of feels that about themselves. Like, my motivations are pure, I'm good. So I could never be that which I abhor, even when you become that monster. So I wonder if there's kind of that where some of these people go, well, I do still believe in free speech, but you're banning conservatives, you're banning this or that.
Well, they're
no,
evil.
Exactly. And it's like this weird switch that it's like kind of like almost a wall that comes down that almost people don't realize. It's like this weird idea that I can never be that monster that I went out to slay.
I think there's a hierarchy of what they believe is justified, right? Like, free speech can be sacrificed at the expense of this person's feelings or shielding someone from this. Like, there are times when you're allowed to compromise certain values. And for other people, free speech is at the top, number one. You wouldn't sacrifice it for anything.
Exactly.
Matt, I saw this tweet about the Great Awokening. Matt Iglesias, one of the founders of Vox.com, said, unpleasant chart. It contradicts my theories and my presumptions. Matthew Iglesias had previously said that the rise of wokeness was due to the fact that Gen Z was paying attention, and that as they were reading the news and getting exposed to the stories, they were then putting it at the forefront of their minds. And then he explained something like, I think he was quoting Ocasio-Cortez, that Gen Z is depressed because they know reality. And that's actually not true.
No, it's
the
not.
reality is they're in a fake reality.
Yes,
they have
this
blinders.
feeds into it.
Yep, they're being fed a feedback loop of psychotic algorithmic content.
I agree.
It is making them insane and violent.
It can't be just the algorithm though, because this concept wouldn't have been viable to me as a child.
Neither would have white supremacy or white nationalism.
Correct.
But it was banned. So that's not in you're not wearing a shirt saying white supremacy is evil.
No, but that's kind of a given.
Right, but here's the thing. What if Twitter was promoting outright white supremacists and neo-Nazis? You would be wearing that shirt being like, what is going on in this country with the right? Why does this happen? Certain ideologies were outright eliminated from the conversation.
Right.
And it was because advertisers found one to be socially acceptable. And it's a combination of reasons. As I mentioned, before social media, most people in this country were like, dude, I don't like racism. Like, we had gotten past that.
Yeah.
So any attack on something as racist would cause panic among someone who didn't want to be called a racist. This meant the far left could accuse you of being a white supremacist for no reason. It went to absurdity. Larry Elder is the blackface of white supremacy.
Right.
Because they use something like that to convince us to adhere to it. So an advertiser that sells vitamins, all of a sudden they're getting attacked saying, you sponsored a white supremacist. And they go, I had no idea. In their mind, they're thinking the Klan but the left is lying and they're saying conservative. But these brands don't know anything about politics and they say, I had no idea we did this. You guys, you got to apologize. Vivek Ramaswamy mentioned that his moment when he came into the culture war was he's running this pharmaceutical company. Black Lives Matter riots happen, and he gets asked to give a statement. And so he was like, sure, I guess. And so he makes a statement like, this is, it's horrible to see these kinds of things happen. Let's come together as a country and trying to find a way through this. And then he was like, the next thing I know, they're saying it wasn't strong enough. It didn't meet the moment. And then 6 advisors resigned from his company. He's like, what is happening? Because he didn't get to his knees and scream to the high heavens. That's what the left has been doing, selectively manipulating. And then you get people who are scared of them to fall in line. Well, but simply put, there are 100 different ideologies, like Ron Paul. The Ron Paul libertarian ideology was massive.
Yeah.
And then what happened? Well, the reason it was massive, it's genuinely a good idea. The libertarians had a lot of great ideas. You may disagree with me, so I'll leave you alone. Hey, that really works for me. That's what I liked about Ron Paul. So in 2007, 2008, the internet was flush with this stuff, the Ron Paul love revolution. I like to mention Mike.com went woke, originally started as more libertarian, Ron Paul-like. But the algorithms were the things that were getting the most clicks were playing into social justice narratives. So these media companies just outright said, whatever makes us money, baby.
I got to connect these dots because you're absolutely right, and the timing is so perfect because you have the 08-09 Great Recession, you have the bailouts that come with that, you have the end the Fed chants that are happening with Ron Paul in 2008, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Klaus Schwab identifies this ESG concept, this anthropogenic global warming concept, this wokeness concept, this inclusion concept, and it's just perfect timing. They flip all of the animosity that's going towards the banks, and they put it right back onto. But that wasn't you're being oppressed by race. Yeah, I know. But still, it's still a redirect from the anger that came from the Federal Reserve's policies in 08-09.
I think that's exactly what happened.
I do too.
I only somewhat agree in that they used wokeness to try and stop Occupy Wall Street and subvert these protests. But I think when you see a company like Mike.com make the conscious decision to maximize on far left ideology instead of Ron Paul libertarian ideology,
of course,
it was all economic. I know I learned this from an employee. I was actually hanging out. It was World Trade Center. It was One Freedom Plaza. And I'm hanging out with someone who worked there explaining to me how they went through that process. And I'm like, damn.
But don't you think that given the political environment of where big tech lives, that they could, and not to mention the Twitter leaks and what we now know about the intervention from the federal government in terms of censorship protocols, in terms of service protocols, could it not have been dictated by the government to take it down this path?
No. So it's been 10 years. We get the start of this shift through social media algorithms around 2008 with Facebook. What happened was, on average, a person would have 300 friends and page likes combined. And that meant your news feed would move fairly quickly. Eventually, people couldn't see anything. And Facebook was like, well, if they're not seeing their core friends, they're not sticking around. We need an algorithm that shows them things they're more likely to interact with. So they made it. This resulted in people being inundated with videos of police brutality, videos of black men being beaten by cops. It created a massive wave of people who are anti-establishment, anti-police. In the beginning, though, you got a lot of libertarians. People were like, screw the police. These people are bad.
Yeah, that's when I was there.
But also, you had distrust in government, so you ended up with Ron Paul as sort of the avatar for this. That was the first iteration. But as the algorithms became more and more pronounced, as more people got onto social media, the things that would make the most money were stories about, first, police brutality. Tie in some racism to it, the article gets 10 times as many views.
Interesting.
It's actually like... Vivek was telling me this morning. He said, he asked me if I ever went whitewater rafting. And I was like, yes. And he goes, okay, how do you get a class 5 rapid? When 2 streams come together of equal force, you don't get a 2 times stream, you get a 10 times, an exponential boost. So when someone wrote an article about police brutality, people would be like, oh. But if they wrote about racist police brutality, it would be massively, exponentially increased in terms of viewership. And I'll tell you why. The algorithm is programmed so that if there is an article that within the first 10 minutes, it received 100 views, the algorithm would say, show this to 1,000 more people. If it gets 100 views in the next 5 minutes among those 1,000, show it to 10,000.
Right.
If in the next 5 minutes it gets 1,000, show it to 10,000 more. That's the exponential growth train of how these algorithms were basically working.
Right.
Here's what happens. An article about police brutality is shown to 100 people and 10 people do click it. It goes viral. An article about racism is shown to 100 people. It goes viral. But an article about racism and police brutality hits 20 people in the first minute. 2 times. So what happens then is the algorithm exponentially increases the blast off of this. It then says, whoa, how many did we get in the first 10 minutes? 1,000?
Right.
Whoa, this must be a good article. Show it to 100,000 people right now. And if 10,000 people click on it, and then it would, and then this one article would get sent to 10 million people in 1 hour. So that was an exponential burst. This led to the rise of intersectionality. Feminism. First, it was feminism. It was women's rights. And then the question became, how is it that we talk about police brutality, racism, and feminism, but now in 2012, 2013, we're talking about intersectional feminism? Because an article that contained sexism, feminism, and police brutality would get 100-fold as many views. So everyone's talking about wokeness, everyone's talking about ESG, but what I always remind people is this didn't start there. You can actually watch the progression of the ideology and how it was formed. It wasn't like Klaus Schwab drafted this letter, submitted it to these companies, and then all of a sudden from 2008 to 2010, ESG existed. And we were talking about wokeness and critical race theory. No. It started with police brutality. Everyone was in favor of Ron Paul. Then these companies started to shift and become woke. We introduced racism into the mix. Then we had Gamergate, video games, misogyny in games. You get feminism, Anita Sarkeesian, etc. Eventually, you get into the era of critical race theory.
Right.
Now, critical race theory has graduated to critical gender theory and in general wokeness. You can actually watch the track that social media has created this amorphous zombie horde.
It's very interesting, but the timing, it just continues to give me pause, because 0405 is literally when the United Nations writes up their first conceptual idea of ESG. And by 2010-11, the World Economic Forum has already made it like their focal point. And then you're absolutely right, though. It doesn't really take over corporate America or the global corporate environment until 2019.
I think that's a confirmation bias, because what you're not talking about is any other corporate plan or ideology introduced by global elites except for that one. And it's because it's the one you know.
Well, it's also the one that's the most evil, but yeah.
There was also talk about doing block currencies. I remember Alex Jones talked about this 20 years ago. A North American currency. This is before the euro, and then the euro happened.
Yeah, the Amero.
And there was big talk about an economic plan, but often what happens is they'll float an idea, and if it doesn't go anywhere, it just fizzles.
In fact, we have
that's how everything happens.
We have a chance to fizzle CBDC right now. Central bank. Yeah, that thing's crap.
So anyway,
they're going to backdoor that.
The Amero conversation is interesting, right? We're not talking about the Amero anymore.
No.
The idea was that there would be Canada, the US, and Mexico sharing one currency. I remember Alex Jones talked about it a whole lot. Never happened. Why? Just there's a lot of ideas they floated that never took off.
Yeah.
A lot of conversations that happened that never went anywhere.
The advent of central bank digital currencies and Bitcoin and blockchain technology, I think, kind of forces them to regroup and come up with a new scheme, which will probably be the CBDC.
But Bitcoin didn't matter until, 2014?
Yeah, but when they were talking about the Amero.
2000, 2002, 2003?
Right.
So why did... My point is just this. Why aren't we sitting here complaining about the attempt to implement a North American currency, but you are wearing a shirt about ESG? A bunch of ideas were presented. Some of them persisted. That's it. I don't think it's that they were like, in 20 years, this will be the plan.
Although
I'll
it might have, only because the Twitter files are pretty eye-opening, and we see that the FBI has been in there telling them what to do. Maybe a decade ago they were also. Like, I don't know.
That's my concern, is do we know that these, like Tim's saying that it just became more viral and more profitable. I'm saying, couldn't you, if you had control of the algorithm setting, couldn't you make anything go viral essentially?
So the issue
on
is
your network,
right?
You would have to believe that these people came up with a plan for ESG in 2005, and then the other people who came up with other ideas, they were dummy ideas. They were proxy ideas meant to confuse and distract us. And then once the social media companies existed, they planted people within those companies not to implement their plans right away, but to only implement the first page of their 100-page plan through the idea of feminism. Then they'd have to write an algorithm that would guarantee the promotion of racism and police brutality, but not at the same time. But my point is this. I watched all this. We have the data showing the rise in this terminology over years, and the hockey sticks and the spikes.
I'm going the opposite direction though. I'm saying, what if they already have this playbook, and then they're looking at what is fertile ground here? We have a whole bunch of kids that have been raised in the public school system to be very anti-racist, very progressive in nature. We're going to formulate our protocols for power accumulation using what we will think will already work on this population. That makes sense to me.
Sure, but what makes more sense, in my opinion, is let's say there's a guy named Schwaus Club, and he believes in hardcore laissez-faire capitalism.
He sounds awesome.
And right now he's sitting in his lair in Switzerland going, "It is a shame that our plan didn't work. No!" And the other elitist psychopaths, we're not discussing because they didn't make it.
Yeah.
What I think is more likely is, of the 10 psychopaths that were, you know Plinko?
Yeah.
You drop the little thing and there's little pegs and it goes, and you're hoping it goes in the middle where the $1 million is. You put 10 psychotic global elite, millionaires and billionaires, you drop them and their pegs bounce around and then one of them lands right in the middle. And that's Klaus Schwab. And then we're going, here's his plan. Here's how he did it. And I'm like, no, there were a bunch of other people trying to do a bunch of things. They just didn't fit the mold.
You know what's wild about this thing you pulled up, this diagram here, is that look at Cuba. Cuba's the communist place. It's the one that in 2000 was extremely high up on the, all the other ones started low and became talking about racism and sexism, but it was already happening in Cuba. And then it dipped in 2005 after the war in Iraq.
But look at Iran. Iran had spikes and a stable medium rate of these conversations. Look at Malaysia. There was actually a spike early in the 2000s. It dipped a little bit, spiked again. There are some countries. South Africa had a huge spike.
Yeah, South Africa started off high, similar to Cuba, not as high as Cuba.
But Cuba was all the way at the top.
And South Africa was going through apartheid.
Here's what I do think your observation tells us. We are all heading towards communism.
I completely agree.
It seems like a communist tactic for sure. And
yes.
other social media's adopted it probably unwittingly through their algorithmic manipulation.
I would believe what's more likely is that as these things started to emerge, communists noticed and then exploited it to an extreme degree.
Yeah, they got to be subtle.
But it's the people this falls in line with what I talk about with wokeness, when people are like, wokeness is these leftist theories that emerge, and it's like, no. Go and talk to a woke person. And I think the reason I differ from many of these conservative independent thinkers about what wokeness is because I was at Occupy Wall Street, is because I spent a decade on the ground with these people. And I've found that they don't believe anything. They Ukraine war. And I'm like, what does that have to do with the Frankfurt School? Nothing.
Right.
It's a cult. Yeah. That's it.
That's why I think what you're talking about with like the kind of internal momentum of the algorithm and stuff, but also there has to be fertile ground there as well for why these, racism and other buzzwords were catching on the same way that they were, and then kind of like creating almost a death spiral, because then like more and more it was kind of coalescing. As I think in some ways, and also maybe why some of these other nations sometimes kind of use the talking points, is because it speaks to a real pain that I think people feel. A lot of people are economically insecure. A lot of people do feel like the state is rigged against them. And again, those are quite real concerns. And then, as you said, but the state doesn't want a solution to say like a Ron Paul or an adjacent type view, because then that takes away from their power. So then they're going to boost up these other, again, whatever you want to call them, the different, like wokeism, whatever you want to call it, because it kind of funnels back to, well, the state is good and the state will protect you from X, Y, Z, these threats that we've, identified, and we will fix this problem together. And so I wonder if that may be why, because again, I think because what also gets boosted is the typical Republican, right? And, I don't know where I am right now. I feel like I'm in a weird place ideologically. I'm very conservative in my beliefs. I'm very
Come to the
Catholic,
dark side.
but I find myself, I love a lot of libertarians. Scott Horton, the rest are good friends. I really love them. I like a lot of their critiques and stuff. And what it kind of opened my eyes to was, it was one thing when I was 16 years old in my high school Republican class, right? We had our little high school group and stuff, and it's pick yourself up by the bootstraps. Come on, kid, get out there, work. My dad used to, my grandpa used to, all that kind of thing. Well, then I get out into the real world and I'm like, wow, this sucks. Everything is rigged against you.
It's really tough.
You try and get a job this happened to me when I was 18, 19, 20, could not get a job at even McDonald's, Panda Express, nothing was taking me. And I'm like, I'm not dumb, hopefully. I'm not, a bad kid. I don't have any grade issues. There's nothing. So why am I not being hired? And I'm not getting hired, but 16-year-olds could get hired at some of the jobs I was applying to. And sometimes they tell you, well, actually something my friend told me, because she was also having a similar issue, is that at that time, California was raising minimum wage. And so they were saying, well, if they're going to pay you more, they're going to want someone who maybe has spouse, kids, or has more work experience than you. And I'm like, even in low-level jobs? And she's like, well, yeah. And so I kind of started to realize, like, wow, I can't get my foot in the door anywhere. Everywhere is telling me, well, you're going to be like a grocery bagger. You need 5 years experience. Like, I know, hyperbole there, but that was kind of the idea. And I'm like, well, how can I get experience if no one's giving me that first job? Yeah. And so then I realized, well, then if that's how that is, how am I going to get an apartment? And then how come apartments where I live are like $2+ grand? It's not what my mom and dad pay for mortgage. Wait a second. Then how am I going to save up money for a house? They're $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. And then I realized, like, oh, normal Republican, our talking points are not meeting people where they're at whatsoever. People are dealing with real issues and they're not feeling heard. A lot of young kids grew up hearing, and I felt this too, a lot of Republicans hear this too, saying you got to go to college, you got to go to the best university, or your life is over. Teachers would pound that into you. Your coaches would tell that to you. So you finally do it. You go to university. Now you're in a lot of debt. You can't get a job for the reasons I mentioned earlier. You're making 30 grand a year. You don't know where you're maybe rooming with 3 or 4 people because you can't make rent. And then you have people telling you, you went to college and you took out that loan. You dummy. Yep. Look at you. And then you feel like you're just being yelled at by the same people who told you to go down that life path. So I'm a conservative, but I kind of like the specific strain I am. I don't know, because I want to meet people where they are, because that's why so many kids are going off on these left, because at least they feel heard. And like, you're right, Tim, a lot of them, they don't have like a strong ideological position as to why. They just hurt a lot of what do we deal with young people? Suicide is extremely high. Drug overdoses. A lot of kids are doing escapism because they don't know. They just grow up hearing, everything's evil. If you get married, have kids, get a job, you're only working for the man. And then kids who actually do want to do that, they find it's very hard to do this. So they kind of feel like, wow, I don't know. I'm tugged in both directions. And then this is the only side that it seems like they're listening to my pain at least. So I'll just mold myself to whatever they're saying.
The problem is that they're prescribing more poison to alleviate what is already damaging them. Yeah. So I agree with you, though. It doesn't reach them because they have gone through 12 plus years of indoctrination into this ideology. So if you just go, well, in truth, it's actually the minimum wage. It's the reason that you weren't able to get a job. And now that's why you went to college. You took on all this student loan, and it's actually all a product of the government. But then you have a guy who's running for president who's like, I'm going to get rid of that student loan and you're not the problem here. They're like, well, that sounds awesome.
I couldn't tell you how many people, because I did go to university, who were like, Bernie Sanders sounds great, free college. Yeah. Like, that would be a great idea. This is the worst. I'm going to graduate with debt. I think you're completely right that people, I love a lot of the ideology that comes with being conservative. I think, working hard and being self-reliant are honorable skills. But what does that look like when you're 18 and you have no work experience or don't have a lot of work experience and no one will hire you? I think it's easy to become discouraged, because that's the best thing about being young. You are incredibly hopeful and optimistic and you just want to go and do all the things. But if you can't move out of your parents' house and gain independence because you are financially strapped from the beginning, it becomes sort of difficult to look at that person saying like, well, just try harder, keep working, and be like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You do have to work. This is a big part of it, is you need to work 12 hours a day to succeed in this life, especially now. You need to be the one that's there first, or at least that you're willing to spend 12 hours doing what you love 5 days a week.
And you know what he was just talking about with the algorithm? It's like that 8 hours, that's the baseline that everyone else is putting in. Well, you double it, and then it actually creates an exponential growth curve once again. And if you can do that earlier, then that curve has a chance to arc even more exponential as you get older. So like, I did the same thing in my 20s, and because of that, I was able to retire at 37 years old. Like, most of my friends were not willing to make those sacrifices. So if you can actually view it that way, like where if you just make it a little bit better, if you do 10% more or 20% more when you're younger, that exponential growth curve actually works in your benefit.
And then what you do, it's really simple. You in 2010 buy Bitcoin.
Well, that helps too.
Buy a few thousand of them and then just forget. And then 10 years later, you're a billionaire.
Investment is certainly part of it, because it's the same way. You work more, you make a little bit more than everyone else.
Exactly.
The investments start to compound on themselves.
Bingo.
I think you have to make choices that you that don't sound glamorous in today's day and age. Like, it sounds more fun to live in the city and get to do whatever and spend all your money, but like, is it more financially prudent to live somewhere that's more expensive or less expensive so you can save money to eventually buy property?
Yep.
I think it's difficult in indulgence culture, which is what I completely believe we're in right now, to say, look, you have to make a decision for your long term. We live in a now culture.
Like,
I want satisfaction right now. I don't want to have to say no to something, knowing eventually it will lead off. Like you're saying, like you had to put in extra work when you were young, but I don't want to because I want to go off and do this other thing.
And the reason kids won't is because they have so much hopelessness that it's like, I would rather, because I'm going to be battling this battle forever, well, then let me enjoy now, you know? But I didn't feel that way when I was a kid.
Yeah, I think that's a huge difference.
That's just heartbreaking.
The amount of people I say here who are like, well, I'll never be able to buy a house. I'll never be able to get married. I'll never do whatever. It's sort of like, yeah, I would hate all of this too.
And that's all Fed policy. And this is why the libertarians, and this is why I get so activated about Federal Reserve, even though it's so wonky and so cold and dry and such a boring concept to most people. But this is the reason that the Ron Paul Revolution existed. This is the reason that people like me became so activated. Because once you understand that manipulating the money supply, the price of money, the most important market mechanism that exists, well then, the whole system's broken. Of course, the young person who knows they're never going to be able to afford a house becomes hopeless and lives in the present and spends and borrows unnecessarily because they don't think that they have a future. And they're probably right. But who is responsible for that?
Well, then let me ask you, because you would know obviously a lot more than me, and I am genuinely curious, because obviously there's a term that is getting a lot of buzz right now, anarcho-tyranny, right? About like anarchy in the streets, tyranny at the top.
In the sheets.
You know, like you could be a murderer basically in like the streets of a major city, and you can get out, you know, with pretty much, you know, slap on the wrist, but then you don't do everything correct on your taxes, the IRS is going to be knocking on your door, saying those threatening letters and stuff. So anarcho-tyranny. Is there something similar? Because you're right, we are living in like almost like a gluttony age and overindulgence age, but yet we also don't have what we need. So there's like a weird thing, like young people today, like we have all the new phones, we have fast fashion, we have a lot of like cheap stuff. And I know a lot of that from some of the libertarians. I was, again, dipping my toes and I don't know as much right now, but they were saying like with inflation over time that a lot of goods are made more cheaply now because of that. And so I wonder if there's like a similar term to describe like as anarcho-tyranny, but for like our goods, where you have a lot of young people who were satiated and overindulged in these kind of like trivial matters. You know, buy the video games, buy the fast fashion. We can go to the mall. We have that kind of money, but we don't have the money for what actually matters in life, like the home, the car, the marriage, the whatever. So it's almost like a weird, because again, when I was coming up as a normie conservative, what would I always say to young people? Why are you so depressed? We live in the most wealthiest, prosperous time ever. And that is true. But then also you look and go, well, people are spiritually impoverished. People don't have the same faith in God and family, because back in the day, you're ill, your family's there to take care of you. Now it gets kind of outsourced in a sense. You get sent to the old people's home, where
they're fueled by envy, right?
Yes.
They think they should have these things and they don't have them, so you become immensely frustrated with society. And again, we have taught people that, well, actually all your problems are someone else's fault, right?
But keep in mind too that because you now have Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, like your assumption is that you don't need your children to take care of you in old age. So what does that mean? You don't necessarily care about taking care of your kids. It doesn't give as much of an incentive to do so. If you're a good person, you're going to do it anyways. But I'm just saying, like, all of this is incentive manipulation that comes as a byproduct of state intervention into our culture, our economy most specifically. And then it trickles down into the economy and it degrades the foundation. This is why I'm such a big proponent of Bitcoin, because I believe that it has the capacity to remedy many of these cultural ills. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think that ultimately the reason I don't agree with Tim that this will be the new religion of the next millennia or whatever is because it is self-devouring. We will end up in ruin if that is the case, and I refuse to believe.
And then a real religion will appear because some prophet will stand up.
That's my belief.
Or if the track
Satoshi.
for the new religion is actually Abrahamic, then it'll be some resurgence of Christianity. Actually,
yeah, I think so.
So
I think you do see. I mean,
that's
there are
the inverse possibility.
Yeah, I think there's
some revivalism.
Yeah, especially in like I think it's Kyrgyzstan right now. There's some crazy wave of young people. Like there are countries where the biggest growth of church attendance is among young people, which of course it would have to be if you're going to develop a religious country.
Now, what if these are the end times, Revelation, And what is going to
Not
happen?
impossible.
What is actually going to happen is the new religion will actually be set after the second coming. So
That's what
all
I
of
think's
these
gonna
things that are happening, like the mark of the beast, you cannot buy or sell unless you bear the mark and things like that. What if all these things really are coming true? And then there is the second coming, and then the new religion for the age of Aquarius actually is the newest, expansion upon Christianity into the next.
The only downside of that,
word or
I
whatever.
love it, but I don't like waiting for someone to come save us because we have to save ourselves. This
Agreed.
is a reoccurring theme.
Absolutely agree.
The second coming is within all of us. Like each of us, if each of us can step up and become the Christ in our own life and treat other people with that, I think that's like the resurgence or the new society that can overcome corporate greed. Other than that, corporate greed's too powerful. I don't see anything other than
State power is way more powerful than corporate greed.
like just the barrel of a gun,
Yes.
like weaponry.
Yes.
Yeah, the only way to defeat weaponry is to change the minds of the people that hold the weapons. Or the hearts of the-
even state government can raid a Fortune 500's office and arrest the top executives
Exactly.
and then destroy the company.
But
McDonald's can't go arrest the president.
But
I
who
promise.
runs the show? Is it the state of the United States or is it Halliburton and Lockheed Martin?
I mean, it's a revolving door, so who knows? But regardless, the monopoly on violence exists within the state, not within the corporation. So I think that they take the cake in terms of power wielding.
Kara, do you get into like Revelation? Have you studied that stuff much?
Well,
Am I going to be saved or not?
So I'm a Catholic. So for me, I think Christ even says in the New Testament that even he doesn't know the hour nor the day. So that's not something if Christ himself's not
He
going to
knows
predict, he's the God
everything.
man.
Come on.
He's the God man. I'm not going to predict or anything. What I do know is obviously all of us are going to die. Whether or not the second coming comes first, before that doesn't matter. We're all going to die. And so to get ourselves right with God, one thing I know in my personal life is I see God moving through my life, very obviously bringing me, first of all, here to this fun podcast with all of you lovely people, into my job and stuff. So I have my scapular actually on right now. So
I think I figured it out. Or finish. I don't want to interrupt.
oh, no worries. That was
What is that?
I think I figured it out.
scapular.
So here's what I think happened. Klaus Schwab, when he was a teenager, he was depressed and angry, and he tried to take his own life, but only briefly as he was resuscitated. But in that tiny moment, he was sent to hell because it's a mortal sin to commit suicide. And for him, it felt like an eternity, but he was resuscitated. And now he knows that he's committed this mortal sin. And no matter what he does, when he dies, he's going to hell. So he is trying to, seek immortality and then create this new dominant religion and take over
Maybe
so
if
that
he
he
makes
can
it
never.
hell on earth, he'll live forever.
This is actually the theme of like two different things, like Constantine, the movie, where he's like, he knows he's going to hell because when he was a kid, he tried to kill himself. And then I think this was Shadowlands in World of Warcraft. Sylvanas was like, no matter what I do, I'm going to like this whatever region. So she shatters the veil between the afterlife because she was like, if I'm going, everyone's going with me.
I will say one interesting thing that I noticed, and one of my producers, he's actually filling in for me today, Chris Boyle. One of our big conversations is it's interesting that, and you're right, so the atheist age came in. I think a lot of that is actually motivated by big data, the idea that, see, man, you're nothing. We can predict everything about you, so there's actually nothing special and unique about you. It's kind of like the idea where Earth is nothing special, it's just a floating rock and it's one of many planets, yada yada. However, that doesn't resonate with people. Like maybe at first when you're kind of rebellious and a kid, whatever. But I think people kind of grow out of that because the need for belonging, for higher purpose, it's everything. Because if you look from the beginning of time and even on what you can't see in the invisible world of pathogens and stuff, everything's eating each other, everything's killing each other. Sometimes you feel like it's a struggle to stay alive every day, and yet we still find meaning and purpose even though we know that. So I think one thing that we've noticed a lot right now with politics specifically is that even the official religion is kind of, obviously talking about the pew numbers going down, people affiliating as nuns, as like nun as in religious affiliation, but you see a resurgence almost in like witchcraft, occult. You see that a lot on TikTok for young people, the crystal shops everywhere, tarot card shops everywhere, palm reading. I know in Ukraine they were doing the Viking, pagan ritual for some of the deceased fighters. One of their state official accounts was doing hexes. So it is kind of strange. It's similar to how like Dawkins and stuff, they would say, we don't believe in God or a higher power. And yet they talk about evolution and natural selection in a way like it was an omnipotent
With reverence,
force.
yeah.
It's like it's an omnipotent force. I'm like, but this is just accidents. It's not like a guided force, but they would talk about it like a guided force. People talk about the universe or karma like it's almost a god, but they say, I don't believe in a sky daddy. But the universe is directing me. I'm like, wait a second. So C.S. Lewis would say that in the same way we hunger because we need food to live, we thirst because we need drink to live, we hunger for the divine, for worship, for adoration. It's a universal that through anthropology that all human cultures that we found have some supernatural belief attached to them. It's something that mankind it's like innate in us. We're looking for that proper outlet for it. But I think that's why we can never get away from the paradigm of man has to worship something. So politics otherwise.
Murray Rothbard wrote in Anatomy of the State that in the
I'm
absence
reading one
of
of his books right now.
Good. You're on your way. You're going to be one of us in no time. In the absence of the state, that there would either be statism or scientism, and that the state would probably use scientism. And then you look at Anthony Fauci. I was rereading Anatomy of the State during the lockdowns, and I was like, I know exactly what you are, Tony.
I don't consider myself Christian. I say this all the time. I believe in God. I don't really follow any like scripture of any religious institution, but I got to say over the past few years, the more I've seen, the more it certainly felt like angels and demons. The more it feels like a nefarious, malevolent presence seeking to subvert something more divine in this world.
Well, then allow me, if you'll allow me to posit one theory. So obviously, like, I think that your algorithm theory, I think that is very, very true to kind of how we got here and everything's kind of exploded. Because a lot of people say, it seems like it just kind of came out of left field, a lot of this stuff. And I know the ideologies go back many decades, but I think one thing is, at least for me as a Catholic, so again, this is just my theory, people just can take it or leave it. I'm not trying to push anything on anyone. It's just something to kind of mull over. One idea that I think is strange is how I can be doing my show on a random Tuesday night. We're talking about, I don't know, a drag queen who's naked dancing in front of kids, and you see the moms brought the kids there for the express purpose of seeing a naked dancer. They're not shocked. They're like, oh, I didn't know. I thought this was family friendly. Like, they're there for that reason, actually. You've seen in the Washington Post, there's a woman who wrote saying, yes, I bring my toddler to gay pride parades for the kink, and I want them exposed to that. So I think, wow, this is very strange. How and why? For me, at least as a Catholic, believing in the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, they're a family at heart, reflected in the Holy Family, which is a representation of them on earth, and then including the God-man himself, so he's in both. So Saint Joseph, then the Blessed Virgin Mary, and Jesus. So the mother, father become one through marriage, and then through their love, they create a child. They're open to that new life. So sexual love, and you see a lot of saints actually in the Catholic Church talking about ecstasy, climax and stuff, and sexual relations, that it's a shadow of things to come, of full union with God. Because for us as Catholics, the idea of being in the church is you're a spouse of Christ. And so the idea for heaven is that you are fully one with God in a spousal union. That's why throughout the Bible, wedding feasts are so prominent. The wedding feast of Cana, the marriage feast of the Lamb, heaven being described as a wedding feast, as a feast itself. So a lot of it is these kinds of themes. So if God is the foundation of all reality and all that exists, and love is the center of that, and sexual relations on earth, which is why the church, why we have morality so strongly, it's not because we have arbitrary rules, it's because it's guiding your soul to grow and to be better, and not to be deformed or malformed. Well, then if all of this is true, no wonder that when you pull away God and try and remake society in your own image, because that's what leftism is, right? That reality is not itself. It can be manipulated, it can be changed. We can remake reality. So if that's true, if that's what we're trying to undo, then no wonder the seam that we see splitting is sex specifically, whether it's the drag queen story hours, whether it's just any of these other debates that we're having. I think
women vote Democrat, men vote conservative. Like,
that tends to
overwhelmingly.
be.
Yeah. All right, shall we go to Super Chats?
Let's do it.
If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends if you do like it, and become a member by going to timcast.com and clicking Join Us to get access to the uncensored members-only show archive. We do those live Monday through Thursday at about 10 p.m. And you can join the Discord and chat with other like-minded individuals, build community, and other cool stuff. We're going to be doing... We didn't do it today, but we've set up a system by which we can now select companies that our members actually run or programs they have. So that's our sponsor spot for Fridays. So hopefully we'll get that going next week, meaning if you're a member, you're basically sponsoring the show already. We'll shout out we'll shout out a company from each of you once per week. I'm really excited for it. Let's read some more. Let's read some Super Chats. All right, Shaky Own says, I got an email about a Timcast gift and was told it would be shipped by the end of the week, but I haven't heard anything, not complaining, just curious. I think I heard something about that. Do we know what that's about? No? Someone was telling me something. They were going to be sending members some stuff. So Maybe I'm wrong. I don't
I've
know.
seen some updates in the Discord. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I know there is like every day. Brett and Andrew are working on that Discord and improving it, making
and
it
there's
better.
like
So it could be
promos
something
and
with
stuff.
that. Yeah.
Maybe you got randomly selected for some promo or something. So, all right. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, Tim, my dude, are the culture wars only getting better, or is that just me? Not sure about Vivek, but now I'm digging him. You turn us on to so many. Yeah, I guess the latest episode of the Culture War podcast, it's episode number 7, youtube.com/Timcast, or check it out on Apple and Spotify. I had a 2-hour conversation with Vivek Ramaswamy, and man, that dude is very, very smart. I'm really excited to see him on the debate stage. He's running for president, obviously, as a Republican. I think he's going to give... I think he already just pushes DeSantis way, way down. He makes DeSantis look like... When people are like, I think it's going to be Trump or DeSantis, I'm like, I'm not so sure. Depending on how much attention Vivek can actually get, his knowledge of all of this stuff, be it ESG, the culture wars, corporations, pharmaceuticals, his tenacity, his calls to action, I think actually are substantially better than Ron DeSantis.
Oh, man.
But we'll see.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
I've read his book, and Vivek's awesome. I think I could not appreciate him
Vivek,
more.
like cake.
Vivek, like cake.
Yeah.
I could not appreciate him more for shedding light on ESG. When he did, he was doing it very early, along with James Lindsay and others. Only thing that I really have a problem with, tripling down on the war on drugs. And
is that one of his positions?
he wants to. He basically said he's going to threaten the Mexican government that if they they don't shut the border down and keep the drugs from flowing across, fentanyl specifically, that then he will go to war against the cartels. And it's like, well, first off, as an anti-war guy, but also someone who doesn't believe that prohibition of drugs works, I can't believe that this is an appealing stance to take, even amongst the GOP.
I disagree to a certain extent. Talking about securing the border and stopping human trafficking and drug smuggling is like, I think we need a border.
Well, I'm fine with that, but you honestly think they're going to stop drugs, Tim? Come on.
I think Vivek is an outsider candidate who is actually serious about securing the border and implementing the programs.
I think he could secure the border. I don't think he's going to stop the flow of drugs.
But
there
saying
is too
war on
much
drugs
demand.
is different. Saying war on drugs is different. Like war on drugs typically refers to like nonviolent offenders being put in federal prison. If we're talking about cartels, which are murdering people and like stringing them up and stuff like that, well, I think that's a fairly popular position that we don't want that to happen.
I will go deep
we'll
with
see.
him on
We'll
this.
see.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
All right. Tracer says, for my channel membership birthday, I wish for a Tim emoji with red laser eyes and a ghost girl emoji, but let Mary decide what it should be. Well, all right. I don't know.
Someone in Discord's going to make it, I think.
Yeah, someone in Discord could absolutely. Yeah, if someone in Discord makes that, we could use, Tim with
Did
laser
you
eyes.
see the one of you, but it's like a religious figure with a chicken?
skateboard?
It's like they didn't want to post it because it was like, is this too racy to post publicly? Because it's like you as like a saint.
Yeah, I
with a
wouldn't.
skateboard.
And I was asked like, "Oh, you want to run that?" I was
Excellent
like,
graphic.
I wouldn't use
Whoever made that, stellar job.
it.
More of those. That was hilarious.
It's
really
like,
well done.
You know those candles where it's like a saint and he's like, it was me with a chicken and a skateboard or something. And I was like, but I wouldn't want to actually sell that because of the religious iconography. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't assert that. But
Was it AI? I wonder. Let me know.
Might have been.
All right, what do we got here? John Kirsten says, forget Vosh and Kirk or Destiny and Smith. The pairing we actually need is Dorr and Bannon. I'll ask him. But the pairing we actually need is poker with the boys, Jimmy Dore playing poker with Steve Bannon
Hell yeah.
and Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh my God, dude.
So I actually think there's
That'd
a
be so
possibility
cool.
for some Democrats to actually come and play. If the goal of the show is simply, it's a game of poker, we're not here to debate politics, but we will have playful ribbing as long as it's not specific.
Yeah.
So making a joke being like, if AOC was playing with Matt Gaetz and then Matt, raised a bet, she was like, you think I'm going to believe anything this guy says? Like jokes like that. I think we actually would see some Democrats be willing to come and play if it was like, we're not here to go to war. We're here to this is more like,
Right.
we wave the white flag, we have fun, we be human.
It's about building rapport as opposed to actually debating ideas.
But I still got to be honest, I really doubt most of them would just say no, screw off.
Yeah, most would say
Wouldn't
no.
do it because they would know their audience is going to be like, how dare you do that? But
it'll-
some of them would do it.
It'll be after this show. It'll be a Friday night show, right?
Yep, Friday night,
10:30.
right after we wrap, 10 o'clock probably.
Okay.
But then I wouldn't be there with the guest for like half an hour. So the show would start
gotcha.
probably with Clint.
Yeah.
And then you would be like, what up? We're going to get the game going. And then the idea would be to get one guest per week for that show. And then our Friday night guest, if they could, as well.
That's
So we
it,
would
yeah.
have two people. So like, if we had Vivek Ramaswamy, we'd be like, the next part of the show is you playing poker. And who do we have? Who's our other guest? It's like, oh, it's Dave Smith. So, two presidential contenders potentially. I don't know. Dave hasn't announced.
Too excited.
Yeah, it'd be fun. And it's just table talk. It's not meant to be a serious game. So if you don't understand poker, it shouldn't matter.
Right.
It's more so about people being silly, goofing off, and having fun. So yeah, what do we got here? Bryn Terranova says, I'm a rideshare driver in Austin with over 14,000 rides given. Never again. It's not worth the risk.
Yeah,
well, I wouldn't say quit driving, for this. I would say don't drive anywhere near BLM, when they're riding. That's probably better advice. But I guess the fair point is that guy didn't know.
Yeah.
That guy didn't know. And he was just in his shorts and a T-shirt. And they were like, oh, you go to prison now. Martin Edgar says, today was my last day of work. 7 years U.S. Army plus 28 years Postal Service. 35 years of federal service and into retirement. On to bigger and better things to piss off the leftists. So where should I start, Tim? Oh, man, the world is your oyster. I don't know. Contact Scott Pressler and ask him how you can help register voters and ballot chase and ballot harvest where legal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's an important thing.
Nice work, too, on that,
Yeah,
on that
congrats.
career, man. Or woman, whoever you are. Nice work.
All right. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, Ian, after the opening, I was like, F, why is everything so bad in the dumps? But leave it to Ian to remind us of the good out there. Cheers, good sir.
Oh my gosh. Dude, first, Rage, what's up? Dude, check out that Culture War show from earlier with him and Vivek. I watched like an hour of it before the show. And I just walked in, like I turned it off at 7:15 and walked right up here. And it is just, it's really good to see someone that not only is he a billionaire, nearly, he's like worth 700 million or something. He's has solutions and he wants to run not on saying he's an idiot. That's stupid. He's like, no, I'm going to fix this by putting that there. We can do this to make this better. I have faith in this. It really stunning and very, very enlightening. Also, did you know the guy gave 6 figures to the East Palestine, this dump? He really didn't even publicize it.
He didn't want to say it too.
And he found a church there that was helping people and he gave them 6 figures. He didn't
That's fantastic.
So, I don't pull punches. Maybe I'm not the best adversarially, but if I say something, I will ask. And I've said this before. Trump went down to East Palestine. He brought supplies. He bought food. He was with the people. And I was like, Marianne Williamson didn't do it. Ron DeSantis didn't do it. Vivek Ramaswamy didn't do it. And I was like, fine, Ron DeSantis hasn't announced, but Vivek and Marianne could have gone. So I asked him outright. I was like, look, Marianne Williamson, she's running too. She didn't visit these people. And then I was like, also, you're running. And I had to ask why you didn't. And he said, the first thing he said was he had just announced, like, a couple weeks before, but he was like, these people actually voted for Trump. Trump showed up for them. They were there for him. He was there for them. He was like, for me, if I showed up, it felt like bring a camera. I'm like, that's a stunt. But he was, and it seemed like he really didn't want to have to say it. But he's like, no, I wrote a 6-figure check to donate to people who needed it down there. And I didn't want to make a big deal or say anything to anybody. I thought they needed it. And then I was like, but you have to say it. Because if you don't say it, people assume you did nothing and you don't care.
Right.
And then if you do say it, people are like, oh, he's doing a stunt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he seemed like, I think he genuinely was frustrated that he had to publicly admit to helping these people because he did not want to be he didn't want to make it a spectacle.
Let me just say real quick. Can you imagine how much better of a world we would be living in if you could have Jimmy Dore of the People's Party, Dave Smith of the Libertarian Party, RFK Jr. as the Democrat, and then Vivek Ramaswamy as the GOP? That's a much better field, folks. That's a much, much better field.
Let's have that debate.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Damage Controlling says, Tim, I'm upset. You had the Vivek on your show, and you didn't ask him about the Sunder or Keening. How can you hope to destroy the heart of Lorcan and defeat Molag Joe now? Is this how you honor the 6th house? Does anyone understand that reference? I'm looking at you.
Sounds like some buzzwords up in that. Was it?
I don't know. Jargon.
It feels like a spell cast on Ian.
The Lorcan? Lorcan, I think he's making it up. Cool name, though.
I don't know.
I'm writing a fantasy novel, by the way. It's just coming out so easily.
All right, let's grab some more super chats. Eric Miller says, Tim, regarding Poker with the Boys, why don't you do a rake, cover your cost, and the rest goes to a charity or cause that the Discord votes on every week? That way politicians can play and their winnings would go to the rake. So
I'm the rake.
That probably wouldn't work, right? So here's the thing. We got to pay for the space. We got to pay for the dealers. We've got to pay for the electricity. We got to pay for general materials. We got to pay for security. We have to have a manager on staff checking people in and out. We've got to pay for, I think we're going to need 3 people to run the show itself, because you're going to need someone to handle general cameras and stuff like that. Then you're going to need someone to actually, when the RFID readers read the cards, tracking bets going in, things like that, for people to be able to follow along.
Yep. Travel, production, there's a lot.
Oh yeah, paying for guests to fly it. If we're like, hey, we want you on the show, that's going to be like $2,000. Hotel for 2 or 3 days, Then we got to get the car to bring them out to where the shop is.
Plus, you want to have some money for the people to be playing against each other to try and win.
Well, they got to buy in.
Oh, it's going to be that way.
We're
Let's
looking
go.
we're looking at a standard gaming license for a buy-in. I'm thinking like a 1-2 game. You know, they buy in for $300.
Dude, I'm going all in every time against AOC.
And then depending on who it is, but to a certain extent, we may cover the buy-ins for certain people. If someone's like, dude, I'm not really a poker player, I don't want to, like, we'll cover your buy-in, have fun.
Okay.
But for we want it to be a legitimate game where there's actual table stakes.
That'd be amazing, man.
There are other options for how we could run it. I think having it be a legitimate, just fun game where poker is ancillary and it's a table talk that makes it work. But we've been trying to figure out how to do it. And we were like, maybe the show will make money in super chats and clips to the point where we actually can do what your idea was.
Right.
But then we want to make sure we can undercut the competition. We've got 3 casinos on the East Coast. You've got Horseshoe, Maryland Live, and MGM. Then you have, if you only go about an hour north, you've got Hollywood, York, and Harrisburg, I think. And then if you go an hour west, you've got Hollywood, Charlestown. So there's like 5 casinos within a couple hours of each other that anyone could choose to go to. I think there's only 4 poker rooms. How do we convince people to come to our very small and limited seating club and then participate in shows like this?
Right.
We got to be a really, really awesome place.
Sure.
Figuring out how to do that is going to be tough, and getting dealers to come, we got to make sure we pay the dealers more money and guarantees. But I think we can do it. We're trying to figure it out. And I'm hoping the show itself will generate revenue so that if we tell people, come play here, and there's no rake. We don't need to take a rake because we make money off the show. Then people are going to be like, then why would I go to any of these other casinos? I'll go to the club where I don't got to beat the house to try and play this game.
I'm telling you, if there's no rake, you will get a lot of players.
Right.
A lot.
So for people to understand, a rake is when if 2 people bet, the dealer will take a percentage of it and put it in the house's stack that they just take. They take it.
It's usually $3 or $4 per hand.
Well, at MGM, it's 5. I think Maryland Live and Hollywood 6. That means every time every hand, $6 is taken away.
Right.
You sit there long enough time, you notice everyone's stack is getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yep.
So,
This just in. Lorcan is from Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. I don't know if you guys played. Phenomenal game.
and what is Vivek in Morrowind?
Oh, Vivek is a god in Morrowind. He's one of
See,
the.
you knew.
I do
You
Vivek.
knew.
Yeah, he's one of the. I think the Tribunal or something.
Ian knew the whole time.
Along with what were the other gods? There are a few of them.
Yeah. So, all right. The Wayback says, Tim, the fact that it's confirmed that there were at least 40 feds in the crowd on January 6th means the conspiracy theorists were right jars overflowing at this point. Was it that there were 40 feds on the ground, or was it there were 40 feds working with Proud Boys? Was it on the ground?
I haven't seen clear numbers on it, so I'm hesitant to say.
I saw the story about 40 informants or something, or feds, but I just don't know where they were.
I don't know that.
I
also want to Google it.
I think there were feds on the ground for sure. And
I know there was like 6 actual PD.
Yeah,
That
and we know they've been testifying in court with whatever's going with what the case going on with the Proud Boys. I mean,
Sideways says,
wrong.
Sideways says, amazing interview today, Tim. Really opened my eyes to a new perspective. I thought of a nice saying in hearing him speak. Wokeness is weakness. From that's a good one. Well, look, if you, I thought Vivek was brilliant. He's a really smart guy. I want to see him poll really well in the GOP. I want to see him standing on that stage having a conversation with Trump, because he's going to bring these ideas up that Trump will have to address. And that's a good thing because Vivek knows all about it. My favorite part was when he was like, if I win, I'll have Donald Trump be an advisor. And I'm like, that's a bold statement. Like, he'll be my advisor. But
no, you won't. No, thanks.
If you guys like the show, share it. We're on episode 7 of The Culture War. It's a conversational podcast, not news oriented. And so,
Very chill.
could use your support.
40 undercover informants were on the ground.
Wow.
There you
Holy
go.
crap. Jeez. Clinton Rary says, Tim, I live in Austin. The DA withheld evidence to the grand jury to get an indictment. The lead detective accused the DA of witness tampering. The whole case was stacked against Daniel Perry. APD stated it was an open and closed case of self-defense. Then, if that's the case, then everybody needs to be hitting up Greg Abbott, being like, pardon this man, immediately get him home to his family. No questions. Well, I'll be in Austin tomorrow. We'll see what happens.
Don't drive
Wonder
into
what
any
Greg's up to.
protests.
Maybe we can have him on the show. That'd be cool.
Greg Abbott?
You out there, buddy? You're there.
Well,
There
I
you
tweeted,
are.
who do I got to call? Is there somebody I can call? Because I'll tell you this. It was what I was explaining to Vivek at the end of the show. I'm like, we have what I think we're consistently the biggest live show every night.
Yeah.
But our audience size is not relatively big compared to like Crowder, who gets like 2 million people, or Tucker Carlson gets 3 million. But most people who watch the largest demographic are moderate. Former liberals, moderates, slightly conservative individuals. That's why we get so many conservatives who are like, you got to go on Timcast, because they know half the time, or I should say a third of the audience are people they need to reach that they don't reach in the conservative shows. And the liberals don't get it. Mm-hmm. And so they're ceding that ground, calling me far right or whatever, when the fact that the Ian's on the show, it's like, what Vosh said he liked you and he told us.
I love that guy.
But like, their whole thing is like, no, don't go on Timcast. Okay.
I know it could be such a fun. Let him
lose.
The illusion of like conflict is really, it's just like you shatter it immediately. Get to the human.
And can I just say real fast, talking about like withholding evidence, and I feel like that's becoming more and more common. You hear that a lot, especially in high profile cases such as this one. Whether or not happened specifically in Austin or not is beside the point. We just hear it often. I've had officers on my show who've had to deal with it. And so we can even talk about, to the highest levels with Alvin Bragg and the Trump indictment, the idea of everyone says, all the legal experts say this is a very weak case, especially for a guy who's well known for, reducing charges. Now he's trying to make a misdemeanor into felonies. It seems like he may try to be banking on a judge who's more in his favor and a jury who's more in his favor because it's Manhattan. And you see this time and time again, and it's kind of the confluence of factors of for so many years of, since the left definitely does kind of run the institutions of making anyone that they don't like, anyone to their right, basically as, anathema, don't go on their shows, don't talk to them, don't associate with them. Well, then it comes down to even your rights in the legal courtroom. It's like, if you want to, put up a red flag, even if you think Perry is a murderer, whatever, even if you just want to say, well, what about his rights though in this case? It's like, oh, so you're siding with an evil man?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and then now that's in the conversation switches to that, and now you're not even talking about legal stuff anymore. I just think that's a scary pattern. We're seeing it really come to fruition now.
There's two quick notes. I'm really grateful in a sad way that Trump and also the J6ers have gotten such a raw deal in the legal system, because the right has been the defender of the legal system and the policing forever and ever. And I think it's forcing them to reconsider the blank check that they had written them for so long. And it's not to say that you shouldn't support any cops. It's just that, like, maybe realize that once the state has a monopoly on violence and it becomes very overtly political in nature, it may not be your friend. And I think it quite clearly is not their friend.
It's the same thing with social media algorithms, in my opinion. That stuff should be free. No humans can control that. And if it goes into the wrong hands, it's disaster.
Anarchism, baby. Let's go.
All right. Funny Farm in Texas, y'all, says Tim, we're planning to come to Austin to see y'all Saturday. We live 2 hours away. Will your meetup be in the evening? Keep up the excellent job. We are fellow chicken farmers. Chickens are great, by the way. So we've been ordering sushi and playing poker on Fridays these past few weeks. And then we always take the extra sushi, and the chickens go nuts.
You guys have to see it, because
it is the greatest thing ever.
Giggles like a school child.
Oh, dude.
He's so happy watching these chickens chase after the fish. It's great.
Imagine watching chickens play football. That's what it is.
That's what it is. And he's just rolling on the ground laughing. It's awesome.
It's and like Roberto Jr., the rooster, just watches. He chills. He doesn't fight for the fish. He lets the girls eat it. You throw it in. One runs full speed, grabs it, and then they're all running around in circles. They're jumping over stuff. They're trying to peck it out of each other's mouths. It is a sporting event.
That was a favorite part of my entire day.
Whenever you talk about I'm gonna go live down by the van and by the river or whatever, I always wonder, like, but where are the chickens gonna go?
Yeah, we're all chickens.
There's no way you go anywhere without your chickens. You're like the most devoted chicken owner.
You'd have like a little chicken thing. Okay. So as for the meetup Saturday, so what we're doing is next Friday is the live event at the Vulcan Theater. We're going to be doing our show in Austin the whole week. We have a really amazing lineup of guests. And then tomorrow, I'm not having a meetup. I'm just going to be mentioning to the elite members in the Discord where I am. And that's it. Because I don't like, what happened with John Rich is that he was like, we should play at my honky tonk downtown Nashville. I said, let's do it. And then some crazy person came in and got the whole thing shut down, and the police got called, and they were like, we think there's a credible threat against your life. You can't come. And then I said, they can't stop me. I'll come anyway. And then they were like, there are children outside this building during the day. We strongly recommend against. And I was like, okay, you got me. Crazy. Like, I can't, if a crazy person's threatening to kill me, and then I'm like, I don't care. That's fine. But it's the downtown area with children and families. So it's like, okay, well, I can't do it. So tomorrow what's just going to happen is I'll be in Austin, and then I'll just mention at some point in the evening to the elite members on Discord, hey guys, we're hanging out here. If y'all happen to be nearby, come swing by and say what's up. But I also, for like the restaurant we may be at, I don't want to be like, it's a meetup, and then have like 50 people show up in the restaurants like, dude, what is going on here?
Right.
Like, you can't do an event like this. So, but I'll be mentioning just the elite members that if they're around in Austin. So if that's you, then I'll just post it in the Discord where we're hanging out so people can come say what's up. All right, where we are. Where are we? Alabama, Elise says, hey, Tim, my family and I watch your show nightly. My 8-year-old Gabby was in a worldwide premiere of a music video on YouTube last night. It would mean the world to her if you would shout her out promoting it. Artist NF song, Happy.
Oh, NF is cool.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, he's a rapper. I don't know if I've listened to this one yet, but NF is a rapper and he doesn't curse at all. He started like I don't want to say it's like biblical rap, but his early stuff did have a lot of religious
I think he's
content in
Christian.
it. So he's cool.
Was it Lisa? Lisa was in this video?
Gabby.
Gabby? Nice
Yeah,
job,
where did
Gabby.
Lisa come
I don't know. I was like, what's her name? Lisa? Gabby, nice work. What's the name of the video?
Happy by NF.
That's exciting. I've been in music videos too. That's cool.
You were just in one.
Yes, I was. I was.
Yeah,
I was
very
in a
nice.
Disturbed music video one time.
We've got
Stricken.
another couple songs. So there's a song that I wrote that I played on my Instagram a while ago, and I told Phil, I was like, in terms of like strength and gruffness in the voice, it needs to be here. Here's where I can go. Here's where Phil Labonte can go. And I was like, I think you might have to see if you can, do this one.
Me on Pain? I've been practicing.
No, Phil singing it.
Oh, yeah, Phil's the right
Like
guy for it.
Phil is the guy who's got the deep,
I can
strong voice.
I can pull like dark harmonies. I think that'll make it hurt.
I was like,
let's go.
It's the kind of song that needs to be sung by someone like Phil Labonte and not by someone like me. It's just like it's a hard rock, heavier, All right, what do we got here? Normies Get Out says Starlink is down globally at the moment and has been for about 30 minutes. That was about an hour ago. I saw that story going around.
World War III has begun. Bummer.
It's like, how does it go down?
I don't know.
Was it thousands upon thousands of satellites in low
Yeah.
orbit?
Yeah, that sounds systemic.
Makes
It
me
could be
wonder
a
too
hack.
with the those
And-
documents that got not declassified, but that got
The
leaked. Yeah,
About how Russians aren't actually losing? Is that what it was?
sounds like it.
So is that what it
Interesting.
was? Like documents got leaked showing Russia was actually winning in
That
Ukraine?
the casualties aren't as enormous as
Like they were like
Western media.
1/10 of the reported, which,
Yeah.
by the way, Douglas McGregor and others have been reporting pretty
Right.
much along those lines for quite some time. So
Well, yeah, it's crazy to me that people still believe anything coming out of the ghost of Kiev.
I know, man. It's all BS. But it didn't just start after Russia invaded. The BS about Ukraine has been persistent for decades. Can I go on a rant?
Yeah.
Briefly? All right. So, first off, the World Bank and the IMF absolutely destroyed Russia in the 1990s. And I didn't know anything about this until I read Scott's book. But after the fall of the USSR, the West broadly, but obviously America being the leader of the West, had such an incredible opportunity to look at their fallen foe and say, we are going to welcome you into the capitalist West. Because most people don't know this, but the Russian people, after the fall of communism, were extraordinarily open to the idea of capitalism because they were like, well, that sucked. Let's give this a go. And instead of welcoming them with open arms, they were just kicked in the teeth repeatedly by the West. And George Bush's administration, Bill Clinton's administration, George Bush's Jr.'s administration, year after year, you had both Yeltsin as well as Putin that requested if they could be added to the UN, or excuse me, to NATO. They were laughed off, never even given a consideration. And the only requirement that Putin put on it was that he wanted to not have to wait in the normal line, which obviously as a nation with over 6,000 nuclear weapons, you might want to go like, all right, yeah, we won't make you wait.
Isn't
and the reason
50,000?
No, 6,000. As far as I know, it's 6,000. But the reason he didn't want to wait is because the hardliners in Russia that were super anti-West probably would have toppled him in that interim. So he's just like, look, slap us into NATO.
He didn't have the time to wait.
Yeah, he's like, I can't wait. If you want me in there, put me in there. Let's just accept the fact that we are European. And what do they do instead? They alienate and they drive them into back-to-back depressions over a 3-year period that greatly diminishes the life expectancy of the Russian people. I'm talking late 90s. I was a kid at the time. I had no idea any of this was transpiring. And then, as a byproduct of this, you now have driven Russia not only into war that could have been avoided if our lunatic State Department hadn't been involved, but also into the arms of the CCP, the communists, who also have nuclear weapons, and might I add, over 1 billion people. And we risk World War III now when none of this had to happen. None of it.
So you were correct. They have 5,977. It was at their peak. The Soviet Union had 45,000.
Yes. And that was the other thing that they were doing. They were cutting back on their nuclear arsenal. They ended the Warsaw Pact. They were doing all of these like signs of good faith. And instead of treating them with any sort of respect as a nuclear power, they were just laughed off and abused. And like, this is not to justify or write off Putin's responsibility in the death of countless Ukrainians. And it's absolutely tragic. But to write off the West's responsibility in this, and the U.S. specifically, the Bill Clinton administration, which gets a total clean bill of health. No one even pays attention to what the Clinton administration did to them during that period. But they, along with the IMF and the World Bank, absolutely destroyed Russia. And they laid the groundwork for a nationalistic rise of a strong man like Vladimir Putin. He probably would have never even been the leader of Russia had it been not for Clinton.
It does seem like he's trying to hold on to save the country. That's why he won't let go. And it's like when
Bingo.
he feels comfortable letting go, he'll just be like, is that Scott Horton's book?
Yes. Oh. Yes.
We'll just read one more super
Sorry,
chat in here.
please.
Rife Technology says, I'm fully against CBDC, but I know there's no stopping it. I already have a contract with the central banks. Ian knows who I am.
I got your Rife machine, dude. That's Royal Rife's grandson. And if you don't know Royal Rife, he was, what was he experimenting with? Like healing the body with electromagnetic frequency. So I just received this machine today, and I'm excited to use it. So I'll use it over the weekend, and I'll get back to you and let you know how it is.
All right, everybody, if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, or would you perhaps angrily smash that like button and subscribe to the channel, share the show if you do like it. Make sure you check out the Culture War podcast, Apple, Spotify, and it's on YouTube at youtube.com/Timcast. We had Vivek Ramaswamy, a 2-hour conversation. We talk about a whole bunch of issues, AI, the GOP, Ron DeSantis, his views. I think it's really interesting. He made a lot of really interesting points about, you know, what AI is doing to us and things like that, as well as economic plans. And just you'll learn a lot about who he is. He's running for president, and he's getting a lot of traction. I'm really excited to see him on the debate stage because he knows so much about what's going on in the culture war better than most people. Check that out. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL, basically anywhere, but mostly like Instagram and Facebook. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Kara, do you want to shout anything out?
I guess you guys can follow me on Twitter at Nefertari_25. You can also watch us on OAN. You can Google OAN where to watch. It can help you. You can also download our app. You can watch us there. Live shows. You can watch old episodes. Thank you so much for having me, Tim, and everyone else.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm just super, super grateful for everyone watching. Very happy to be here. So yeah, very happy.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Clint Russell, Liberty Lockdown, as well as Tower Gang. I am just getting my second strike lifted off of YouTube, so go subscribe to Liberty Lockdown on YouTube right now. My very first episode back will be with the father of Julian Assange, Gabriel. Wow. So do not miss that. That's going to be on Monday. I am extraordinarily excited. The only other time I've cried on my show is when I interviewed Ross Ulbricht's mom, and I feel like I'm gonna fight and not cry during this one. So make sure you check that out. And then last but not least, go to the TakeHumanActionTour.com, pick up the tickets for my debate against Destiny in Memphis 2 weekends from now.
And what time is your show going live on Monday on Liberty Lockdown?
Don't know yet. Probably afternoon Monday.
Cool. That's awesome. I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for Timcast.com. You should go to @Timcast, or you should follow @Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. You can go to Timcast News, click on the Read tab, see all of our work from me, our other journalists. Of course, Chris Bertman is there. If you want to follow me personally, you can follow me on Instagram at hannahclaire.b, and you can follow me on Twitter at HC Brimlow. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye, everyone. Ian Crossland, and I just wanted Kara to shout out your Twitter again. It's Nefertari_25. It's NEFERTARI
Yes.
_25.
Perfect.
Good to see
Thank
you.
you.
And I also will be at the Minds Fest performing, or at least having a conversation this coming Saturday, so a week from tomorrow. That's the day after our Friday IRL show at the Vulcan Theater. You can get tickets.vulcanpresents.com.
I think after the Timcast IRL live show on Friday at the Vulcan, we're going to play music.
Oh, solid.
So we'll see what happens.
Cool.
But I think, Phil will be there, you'll be there, I'll be there. So maybe we'll just grab someone from the audience who has some songs to play, and we'll go crazy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Follow me at Kellen PDL. Ian, when we finally get these religious shows going, Carrie, you should totally come by again because
so happy.
we usually have fun on Fridays, but this was a good one. I was just listening, and it was great.
We should do like 13 episodes of we can call it like Ian's Quest. And we get like 13 different religious personalities of different persuasions to sit down and explain their spirituality to Ian.
Can I tell you how much money I would pay to see Jordan Peterson and Ian Crossland sit down for a couple hours? Give me that.
He knows so
Put
much.
it right into my veins.
I'm just imagining Jordan being like, "What? No, Ian, listen. Let me say it one more time.
Educate me.
All right, we're good, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. I got a plane to catch very early because we're flying to Austin, so maybe I'll see you down there. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.